Good evening. I just knocked my camera as soon as I started the stream then. Hello everyone. Welcome to another live stream where I'm going to be working on the Techmarine that I painted in the last stream. I've not really thought this setup through properly. I've moved the camera. It's not in a great position. Anyway, we'll get on with it. Hello, I hope everyone's had a wonderful week since the last stream that we did. I hope you've all managed to get some good hobby stuff done, and yeah, we're just going to be doing some painting this evening. If my little loop deck that I use for kind of switching between the cameras just isn't working, so it's not going to be, nothing's working this evening. It's okay, we'll do without it. It's okay. So yeah, what we did last week, I'll just quickly recap, is I got a hold of the new Mark III Space Marines. I'm just going to get this in focus, and built a Techmarine. And the reason for that was because I have a tournament in less than a month's time, and I needed a 1500 point 40k army. I don't have one, but I do have my old World Eaters Horus Heresy army from last year. So I thought, well, let's try and get that up to scratch. Let's try and get that to a workable force, and just add a few extra models in there. So this is one of the models that I needed. I needed a Techmarine, so I thought, let's build one, kitbash one that will fit nicely into the kind of 30k aesthetic, but also be recognizable on the tabletop. So this is what we did last week, and yeah, we're basically going to be painting this guy on stream today. So I hope everyone's having a good day so far. As with always with these streams, feel free to ask questions as we go along. I will keep checking the chats every now and again. So yeah, if you have any questions, please do preface them with like question, semicolon. It just means that when I'm scanning through the chat, I can see people who've actually asked a question versus people who are just chatting amongst themselves. So yeah, we're just going to jump straight into it. Nothing really talk about the Necromunda reveals from Monday. We might talk about them. We might do. Depends how we've got a lot of painting to do, so there might be times where I'm in the middle of cleaning brushes out, or waiting for paint to dry in between steps. So yeah, we're just going to jump straight into it. So if you haven't done so already, this is basically going to be following the same scheme that I used on my scheme from last year. I did have a video about that. So basically, I'm not 100% sure because I can't remember myself, but someone in the chat last week said that the Techmarines and the Horus Heresy aren't necessarily always red. They can be the colours of their legion, and then the red can be added in, or it was used later on. So we don't know. So I'm just going to paint it white, basically. I'm just going to go for the whole kind of aspect that I did with the previous week. It's going to be mainly white, and I feel like I'm going to add some red in there. And the thing is, the red can be the blood anyway, because he is a World Eater at the end of the day. But yeah, that's the long and short of it. So we're just going to jump straight in. Can you turn the mic volume up a little bit? Yeah, let's see. Will this work? It won't work. I'm going to have to do it on here. 1 2 1 2. I'm just trying to make sure it's not peaking. 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. Okay, how's that? Is that better? Shouldn't be any different, really. I don't know why it would be the exact same settings. Claire, by the way, what are your thoughts on the new Army Painter paint? The one that they claim to being the best in the world. It's the Fnatic stuff, isn't it? I mean, there's a lot of stuff when it comes to any painter, any company in this kind of sphere, where they're always going to be claiming that it's the best paint in the world, it's the best this in the world. Until I've got my hands on them, I'm going to hold judgment. It looks basically really highly pigmented, which is great. Highly pigmented paints are really good. I'm going to be using some in this video. But the trade-off with highly pigmented paints is that you often get the problem of you can end up with like a dusty texture or like a chalky consistency, and it's great for maybe putting down quick block colors. But if you want to do anything more kind of glazes or blends or anything like that, it often gets a little bit tricky to do it. So We'll see. We'll see what it's like. It could just be very highly pigmented paint, which I assume that it is, but it depends what medium it is and what kind of consistency they've got those mediums to. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see. We'll find out. Question: which do you think is getting its refresh for the Horus Heresy Mark II or Mark IV? I don't know really. It's hard to say because Mark III, the fact that Mark III has been refreshed leads me to believe that we would maybe potentially see. Oh, I should also note this is Tamiya's. I don't want to tell it too much. This is Ocean Grey XF82 from Tamiya. So this is an acrylic paint. A few people get confused whenever I use these on the channel because they believe that it is one of their kind of enamel-based paints, and I say, oh yeah, you can thin it with water, and they're like, oh, you can't thin it with water because it's enamel. It's like, well, no, it's the acrylic base. It's literally water-based paint. I'm putting a little bit of airbrush thinner in here, specifically the Tamiya airbrush thinner, just because I do try to use the same paint brands with so I try to use the same thinners with the paint brands. I generally find that if they're going to be tested with anything, they're going to be tested with the paints that the company makes. So yeah, using an acrylic thinner with the same brand makes things. You can actually see slight little red. I don't know if you can see it on the camera. It's little red marks on this. This is from when I was painting the World Eaters last year, and I was doing like the little blood effect stage at the end where it was all like flicking it. But anyway, where was I? I was talking about Mark III. So I think Mark IV's got a good chance. Mark II and Mark III aren't all that much difference, but neither are Mark IV and Mark VI, in my opinion. There obviously are differences, but I would really like to see a Mark V, personally. I think a Mark V would work really well, in my opinion. So, yeah, this is basically mostly going to be white, just because it will be nice to blend in. Hopefully the compressor's not too loud. If it is, I'll just move it a little bit further away. So if it's a little bit annoying, then let me know. And yeah, this is the same principles I used last time. It's going to be lightly spraying a little bit of this Ocean Grey from above, and leaving the recessed areas as the original black. This has just been primed with black, by the way, as well. That's all I've done so far. Rumors say that the Mark 7 CAD files already exist. Mark 7. Well, that's interesting, because isn't that like isn't Mark 7 post heresy? Or was it end of the heresy? Mark 7 is likely for 40K. See, that'd be really interesting to see what would happen, because when you start looking at like Mark 7 and stuff like that, I don't know, maybe Yankee is just could be trolling me, to be fair, because I believe, well, technically I think Mark 7 already does exist in CAD form, because I think some of the more recent, the latest Firstborn kits would have been CAD. But anyway, let's assume that he's not. It'd be interesting, because it's like, if you have seen the new Space Marine Codex, most of the Firstborn units are now gone. Obviously, Terminators have just been incorporated into like a generic class of their own now, so they're still about. But anything originally Firstborn, most of it's gone now. There's no old bikers. There's no so what's left? Devastators, Tactical Squads, Centurions, which are kind of like their own thing. There's not an awful lot left. None of the characters, I think, are Firstborn only anymore. They're all Primaris version, which is why I've had to base this guy on like a 40mm base just to get the scaling right. So you can see I'm just really lightly applying this. I'm just mainly going from above, just to give it that effect that light is falling from above. We're going to be going over with a white, but this Ocean Grey just kind of gives it a slightly cooler tone, because it's like obviously a bluish grey. So once that's in place. I'm also going to be painting most of the arms and stuff white, just because white's going to look really nice if I get some really heavy blood effects, some really nice kind of like stringy blood effects on this claw as well. So white is really going to set those off. So yeah, just trying to be as sparing as I can at first. And this Tamiya's a really good paint to airbrush with. If you kind of looking to airbrush miniatures, then Tamiya's a pretty good place to start. If you get the mixtures right, if you get the consistencies just right, you can get a really nice smooth cover. So you can see it's quite a nice smooth cover. There's a little bit of speckles there, but not too bad. We're going to be adding a little bit of battle damage and things like that, so I don't mind a little bit of speckle. The only thing is with this is it does tend to clog up the airbrush a little bit. Probably more than other paints that I've used, but nothing too bad. Just make sure that claw's being covered. Yeah, so if you didn't notice that so after the end of the last stream, there's still a few little bits that were left, namely this claw. This claw hadn't been attached yet. That is basically, I think it's the flamer arm from the Cataphren destroyers. And it basically had the flamer removed, and then the power claw here is actually from like the Cataphren breaches kit. So they're both from the same kit. And that's just been attached to the backpack. So both of these, apart from the gun, was a Horus Heresy vehicle bolter, I think it was, but I think I did that on the stream. And then I basically just got a corpse on the base, just because there's a little bit of running theme on my Horus Heresy armor that the Ultramarines are on the base, so I thought, well, let's stick another one on there. Helps to break up the base a little bit as well, so that's always a good thing. Okay, yeah, that's pretty much all I'm going to be doing for this first step. I might add a little bit more blue down here because I'm not going to be applying quite as much white. So, yeah, really, really straightforward, basic first step. You can see if you look at it from underneath, it's still quite shaded, still quite dark, which is fine. Just helps to give us a little bit of extra, just catch this elbow as well, extra definition, especially in these recesses and things like that. Also saves us a lot of time later on. So yeah, let's go empty this out. I've neglected the comments because the angle I was painting out was really hard, but yeah. Aquila armor was technically from the end of the Heresy, stolen from Mars by the Imperial Fist, but was so rare it would only be considered 40k en masse. Yeah, so it would be interesting. I wonder if maybe what they would be doing is, with the Horus Heresy, is maybe going into kind of the first few, expanding out. So I think if you look at the book series is kind of wrapping up to the Siege of Terror, isn't it? And I think, if I'm not mistaken, the actual events of the Horus Heresy, the setting of it is like very much towards the end of the Horus Heresy. So I wonder if they're maybe going to be with things like Fulgrim Ascended and Horus Ascended being released as the camera Las Vegas. Yeah, I'm wondering if they might have confirmed this already. I'm just guessing if they're trying to move the timeline of when the Horus Heresy is set to be more towards those final years going into post-Heresy as well, like the first years after the Heresy. So I feel like that makes sense with some of the things. I wouldn't be so. I think I heard rumors about like a Demon Angron, another one coming out, but I don't know. We'll see. I don't know how he would be different from the World Eaters ones, but maybe he would be. Horus Heresy might just turn into early 40k. Fulgrim Ascended is Proteus. It is, yeah. It's on the it was on the look ahead for this week. So yeah, it's interesting to see what direction they do decide to go. But it does feel as though they're kind of trying to push that, which would make sense if Mark 7 is getting released. That's definitely lines up with that end of the Heresy. They should make another Sanguinius that's just dead. Yeah, just something on the base. Just something on the base. That would be amazing. That'd be cool. I like that. I think this is kind of like a good thing because there's still a few Primarchs knocking around towards the end of the Heresy. A few of them were like obviously had been killed or things like that, but like, well, I don't know what's the timeline. Who died during the Heresy? I think people kind of got taken out, didn't they? Not necessarily killed, but like taking out of action for the Heresy, and a few people. And then most of them was after, and they kind of went missing following it. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see where they go with it. Maybe they're doing old worlds. They're just old worlding the Horus Heresy and basically making 40k. I need a bit of better. That'll do. Just clean is fine. Right. Make sure clean. I am very fastidious about my airbrush being cleaned. Some people's airbrushes, when you see them on YouTube and stuff, they just literally have the most atrocious airbrushes ever. I feel like I take a lot of good care about mine. I tend to take it apart quite often. I've got these little like special airbrush lubricant that I rework the parts in as well. Take all the paint out. Give it a quick polish and shine. I don't know. I've had this airbrush for ages, and I feel like it's been fine. I think I've had this airbrush for 6 years now. And some people literally just have an airbrush and use it for a year and say, "Oh, my airbrush is broken." Have you ever done a custom Primarch from one of the two missing factions? No, I haven't. No. And that's interesting, really, because it's kind of like the interesting idea of the original two Primarchs was to allow people to fill them in as they wanted, but obviously as time's gone on, the narrative has shifted to be more that they were possibly destroyed for some reason, maybe via Russ seems to be the biggest, most likely culprit for taking those out based on some of the little things that are mentioned throughout the Horus Heresy series. But yeah, it's not something I've ever thought about strongly or anything like that. I've kind of maybe thought it'd be pretty cool to do something. It would really open up like a expired Primarch kind of thing, and it would fit maybe nicely into the Daunian Heresy stuff that I've done of like alternative stuff. But I think I would end up being my own worst enemy with something like that, whereas I'd make a couple of new Primarchs, completely new Primarchs, and then I would be like, I want to make more Primarchs, and just start making loads of random Primarchs then, which wouldn't be a bad thing, but it kind of, one of them would have to be wrong, I guess. So I don't know. It's hard really, because when I've tried to think about, okay, well, each of the existing Primarchs seem to have some sort of aspect about them, some sort of quality, be it personality, be it types of warfare, be it I don't know, an aesthetic, I guess. And whenever I think of something, I inevitably find myself just kind of thinking of a slightly modified version of an existing Primarch, because there are 18 out there, so they're all quite unique in their own way. Just making sure I'm getting this mixture right, because the white is incredibly... If you get the mixture correct with the white, it goes on really smooth on these. So yeah, I've just mixed in a little bit more of Tamiya's XF2, I think it is, the white. Yeah, Tamiya's flat white XF2, which is the acrylic paint, and mix it with some acrylic thinner as well. So we're just going to applying a little bit of white, and this should be the last airbrush step that we get to. You can see it's just building up really, really smoothly. You can hardly see it. I've got a really, really transparent layer going on here. It's definitely going on. You can just about see it there, but it is taking effect. Now, for the rest of the army, I didn't probably go to this much kind of making sure the blends were correct or anything like that. I tried to keep everything very quick. So a lot of the Marines, they were very much not slapdash. Slapdash isn't the word, but they were a lot more quickly painted, so to speak. But I did make sure that the Praetors that I'd built and the vehicles as well, I took a little bit more time on because they were like the focus. But this is a good thing about the Tamiya paints, because by going over with the ocean grey first, it actually makes the white apply much more easily, and you kind of get to avoid that potential. So these shoulder pads are going to be blue, but I'm just going to be applying a little bit of this here, and then it acts as like a slight zenithal shade then for when the blue goes over later on. And all this is doing is just building up on that previous gradient, so you can see it is white, but there is obviously still a lot of blue, so I kind of need to bring out the white a little bit more, which I will do with some highlights and things like that as well. So that doesn't have to be completely white just yet. And again, just making sure that I'm painting everything from this above angle just to maintain those shadows and darker recesses I've started in the last step. So you can see it's starting to build up, especially around the chest. I always feel like that kind of, I'm going to be sticking something like that. I need to make sure I don't forget the hand. This is one of those things, whenever I'm painting these models, I always end up forgetting painting the second hand. So one of the hand goes on that gets painted, and then the second one I'm like, oh crap, I forgot to paint it. I have to go back later on and do it. So I'm glad I remembered that time. Just going to start a little bit heavier on a few spots, just where I think that extra lightness is going to appeal. So you can see how there's almost a little bit more shading as it comes underneath, because obviously this kind of weapon will cast a shadow, and obviously the shoulders and things like that. So I'm going to make the claws a little bit lighter than the bit behind them, and that's really going to emphasize them and just help to build upon that shading effect. I'm also allowing the layers to, they dry pretty quickly because they're so thin, but I still want to give them a chance to dry, just because you end up with that if you apply the layers too thickly, it almost, it's hard to explain, it kind of pushes away the paint that's already there, and it doesn't look right. It looks like more of a thin wash than an actual paint, especially when you're working with paints that are very thin like this. Okay, so give it a chance to dry a little bit, just to, I'm just going to pop the lid on this. I'm still enough paint in there for next. I'll leave that to dry for a second. It's a question, are you planning on making any more Skitarii kit bashes? Yeah, probably. There's always some good stuff from Skitarii. Speaking of the devil, Kabuski arrived. I was literally about to say, if you follow Kabuski on the Twitter and Instagram, then you'll already be familiar with a few of the modified of the little Skitarii sniper guy that was released last week, that was announced. What was it called? I forgot what it's called now. The guy on the stilts. Stiltkari. That guy. But yeah, it's there's always really cool stuff with Skitarii, and one of the things that I was playing around with the idea of was making the Skitarii less spindly in a way, because obviously if you look at most of the normal Skitarii units, like the actual Skitarii Rangers, Skitarii Vanguard, the Sicarian units, the Farty Glove, the Patraxi, the Silver Hands, they're all kind of a particular style, aren't they? They're all very, very similar. And there's not really much in the way of kind of, I don't know, I think it'd be interesting to try and do some more bulky, more kind of physically imposing Skitarii versions. I don't know, I just think it might be an interesting, different area to explore. I was thinking maybe taking like the Palanite and Forcer torsos, which is a nice little nod to Yankee's obsession with Necromunda. Taking the Palanites and Forces and kind of making them look, it might make them look a bit top heavy, I don't know, but maybe kind of keeping the size that they have kind of around the shoulders, and maybe taper them out with some augmetic parts towards the legs and stuff like that. I don't know, just kind of thought it'd be interesting to see how they would look differently. But it's not really a big kit bash. There's been a few ideas that I've been playing around with for the Necron stuff, because obviously the Necron's going to get re-released at some point on the they're on the pipeline. I don't know if it's going to be this year, I don't know if it's going to be next year, but at some point they're going to get released. And I want to do something around the Necron, so I've had a couple of ideas. One of the ideas was to do a kind of like a tech priest who has been... They're kind of the same idea, but I'm not sure which way to go down. So the first idea is using the Void Dragon model and kind of making it more like a tech priest who's going to delve a little bit too far into the old Necron tomb and found a Catan shard, and has kind of been trying to integrate it into his own augmetics, and it's kind of taken over, so he's almost like a possessed. So it looks like the Void Dragon, but also is kind of Skitarii still, so it's kind of like a nice combination between the two. And then the other idea that I had was also using the Void Dragon. I've actually got 3 ideas with the Void Dragon, but these are the 2 Necron ones, and was dipping into that whole aspect of Ferrus Manus in the Dornian Heresy. He kind of becomes infected with like Xenos tech, and it's kind of heavily implied that it's Necron tech. I believe that's correct. It definitely falls to chaos, and that's kind of where it goes. It'd be interesting to do like the Void Dragon model, but with things that make him look more like Ferrus Manus. So I'm not sure whether to do a Demon Primarch. Demon Primarch is not really Chaos Demon, or some sort of Catan shard infected a tech priest. The third idea I've had with the Void Dragon kit, and I've been sat on this for such a long time, I'm going to have to probably find a picture of it actually. So we're going to go for the first distraction that you can see here. I've been looking at my own videos again. So yeah, there's a piece of artwork, this one, of a statue of the four-armed emperor, which is the kind of the god, so to speak, that the Gene Stealer cults follow. And as you can see, it's basically like a Gene Stealer kind of human hybrid. So it's more human than a Gene Stealer, but definitely has the Gene Stealer aspects to it. And I think it'd be pretty cool to do some sort of avatar of the four-armed emperor. And I think the Void Dragon torso as a basis with a few arms. I tested it out a while ago. I think the Gene Stealer, what's it called? Patriarch, I think it is. Let's find it. Xenos Armies, Gene Stealer cults. I think either this one or the Brood Lord. I can't remember now. Who was it now that was the one I was looking at? One of the models had arms that would fit really well with the Void Dragon scale. So the idea was basically to use the Void Dragon for like that kind of form, if that makes sense. There you go. Have a couple of rending claws, replace his hands with some sort of weaponry, and kind of swap out the head to be more closely resembling this, I guess. Yeah, because there's a whole thing with Gene Stealer cults, isn't there, where they have, I think it was the Brood Lord. I think, if I'm not mistaken, the claws, these arms are actually really licely scaled for work. I've not really thought of it since the new Tyranid kits have come out, so maybe there's something there I could use. I know that the Lictor kit actually has rending claws, and that might be a similar scale as well. So if I go to Gene Stealer cults, I'll show you what I mean. So these little guys here, this is what kind of made me think of it initially. So these little kind of familiars that come with the Brood Coven, these little mini Gene Stealers, these are actually, if I'm not mistaken, I could be getting them wrong, but I think they're psychic manifestations. They're not actually creatures. They're just like little things that have come about as a result of the psychic power that kind of flows, this kind of offshoot of mini hive mind that emits from the patriarch and all the different kind of higher ups in Gene Stealer cults. I'm probably butchering this Gene Stealer cult lore, and there's probably people who are going to be angrily smacking their keyboard. Yeah, but basically this is the idea that I had, to kind of take this kind of this aspect and then build an avatar. Because the one thing that the Gene Stealer cults don't have is a big heavy hitter unit. They don't really have much in the way of they don't have any access to knights. They don't really, I think the biggest thing they have is the rock grinder. They don't have any. Oh no, hang on, they can have a Horus specs now. Oh, it's because I've got Tyranids. But yeah, there's not as much in there that they can have really natively. And I thought it'd be pretty cool to have some sort of big heavy hitter monster Lord of War type unit, and an avatar would make sense. It's like almost if when the harmonics between the psychic powers between everything manifests and this creature is formed and not necessarily grown. But yeah, that's the kind of ideas I've had. Basically, the Void Dragon, there's 3 different models I want to build with it. So yeah, we'll see. Someone's done some art, apparently. He looks happy. But yeah, that's kind of what the idea I had. But anyway, back to the painting. Let me switch. I'm going to have to do this manually because the loop deck is still not working. Let me see if I can reboot the program. Could just be the program needs firing up. Cool. Right. Let's carry on adding a little bit more white. Shouldn't be much more that's needed now. I could see Vashtor being converted into Gene Stealers working well. Yeah, you would have to do a lot of modifications to his legs and stuff like that. There's a lot of things that are part of that model that aren't necessarily, that look too chaotic, that have that kind of aesthetic, but they're probably definitely something you could use, especially in the size and shape of the model. I think the reason why I like the Void Dragon so much is just because of the it's quite a blank model, really. There's not an awful lot of, I'm going to give this ultramarine on the base of spray as well, just to make it easy to paint it later on. Yeah, it's quite it's not a bland model by any stretch of the imagination, but you can quite easily get that effect. You can fill in some of the gaps, take away some of the head and the wings and things like that, and you have what is essentially just a big human-shaped miniature, which is quite a useful base of a kitbash. Lots of demon primarchs you could use. You could really go to town on that. There are even some uses in Age of Sigmar as well. Really, really kind of good, just basic human form, I guess, humanoid form, I suppose. And I think the scale works well with lots of different characters. So you could use heads from the Avatar of Cain, possibly some Primarchs. I'm not 100% sure about the scale, but definitely the helmets and stuff from the Knights could work. Yeah, really, really kind of nice model for doing kitbashes with. So yeah, it'd be... keen to do something, I'm just not sure what yet. Okay. I think that'll do. These shoulder pads are going to be blue anyway, so I'm not going to worry too much about getting those really white. The white's looking too clean, don't worry. There will be plenty of blood splatters and oil washes and things like that, just to darken everything down again. So it's probably better to go a little bit heavier on the white at this stage, just because there will be a little bit of darkening down going on later on. But yeah, I'm quite happy with how that's looking so far. Probably going to do some highlights and things like that. I think the next step that I followed before was to do some chipping effects, if I remember rightly. So I might just jump straight into that. I've still got a little bit of paint in here, so let's finish off this guy. Yeah, I think that's it. I hope I haven't missed anything. It's one of those stages where I'm kind of like, have I missed anything? I'll find out soon, I guess. Right, okay. Let's empty that out and we can make a start on the regular brush stuff. which is a little bit easy to do, because the trouble is with doing anything with an airbrush on a stream, I find it really difficult because I have to concentrate more, because I can't just kind of put the brush down, because I can guarantee I'll just spill airbrush paint all over myself. Good evening, either day hour, or Daya. I don't know how to pronounce your screen name, but hello. Thank you very much for being a member of the channel as well. You may use ad block without feeling guilty. That is the amnesty, ad block amnesty. That's what the membership is, or Patreon support. Feel free to use ad blocks in that case. I won't mind. Do you tend to can prime or airbrush prime? I tend to airbrush prime, mainly because obviously I live in the UK, and whilst the UK doesn't get as cold as other places do, it does get wet, which makes airbrushing more of a year-round activity. Because in the summer, the odd few days in the summer, you can just guarantee. Yankee, I'll let you use an ad block. That's fine. Feel free to use an ad block if you want. You've been absolved of your ad block sins. But yeah, in the summer, it's often too warm or windy, and then the rest of the year it's probably too humid or actively raining or windy or cold. So yeah, airbrush priming tends to just make it a bit easier. I can do things all year round. Replicam priming is quicker though, and I think is when I did the Horus Heresy army, it kind of timed perfectly. It was early, it was kind of like late spring last year, so the weather was just starting to dry up. It wasn't too bad. I could just prime the whole army in one go, at least for the basic primer. But yeah, it was. Oops. It is generally a better thing for me, and I know some people in some countries. But if you probably live in somewhere like California, where the temperature is fairly consistent, more so than probably more northern hemispheres and stuff like that, then it's probably not too bad. But then obviously you're dealing with humidity. If you've got a garage and stuff like that, I've primed in the garage before, but yeah, it's often too difficult. What about brushing on the primer? I do not have an airbrush yet. I've never done a whole model with brush on primer. When I first started painting, the advice that I was given was just put down a black paint over a model and let's just paint it on with a brush. And that does work to a degree, so I imagine brush on primer, which is kind of designed for that effect, is better. But I don't tend to do it just because it's quite difficult. But yeah, I started doing airbrush priming and I just kind of haven't stopped doing it because it's just easy. But if I'm doing a big project, maybe a large army, and it's the right time of year and the right weather conditions, I will use Rattlecam primers, basically. What do you use in terms of ventilation? I have a window there, which is currently closed because I'm on a stream. I can guarantee as soon as I start streaming, someone will decide to have a party in the garden next door or something like that. But normally I do have a window open, and I also do wear a mask as well. I'm not doing it on a stream, but I do wear a mask. Yeah, especially if I'm doing a lot of priming in one. Like this is like one model. It's not too bad. Do you have any recommendations for aspiring kitbash YouTubers on how to get started or source bits and kits affordably? So the first thing I would do, if you're kind of starting out and you want to source bits, then it really depends, really, because I think there's probably a good... I'm revealing my future plans for videos and things like that here, but I do think there's a good market in terms of YouTube viewers of people who would be interested to see how you could get around kitbashing, how you could get around the cost of kitbashing. So if you can figure out a way of kitbashing stuff doing quite extensive kitbashes using only 2 kits, but then still being able to build the full units from those kits still, I think there's definitely something worthwhile there. It would also mean that you could get double the content out of that, out of buying 2 boxes. So if you need bits individually, Bitsbox, eBay sellers, sometimes they pop up on Facebook Marketplace. Some people who you can usually put like on Facebook groups. Maybe if you need parts from Astra Militarum or Space Marines, and it's a selling group, you can often find people who would be willing to sell you some of the spare parts afterwards. But yeah, that's probably the best thing to do, in my opinion. Same here in the Netherlands. It's either too warm or too cold. Never can this weather be normal. We're probably not too dissimilar in terms of weather, I reckon. But yeah. All the bits I need are not available from shops. I have to use Facebook for it. Yeah, it's for me when I first started kitbashing, it was a case that I used to have to buy parts. I mean, I bought some parts from Bitsbox not too long ago. Basically, they were selling the Hellblaster backpacks. I'll show it on here. It's pretty easy. You can see the backpack parts that go on the Hellblaster kits. He had loads of them for sale, and they were selling them for 30 pence each, which is what, about 50 cents, something like that. So yeah, I bought 30 of them solely because the handles are really nice. It's what the handles I use on my aggressors. You can see the handle there, and these little extra bits and the pipes are useful. But no one wanted them. Apparently, some people didn't want them, so I thought, well. Also bought a ton of Phobos shoulder pads as well, because people don't want those either. So yeah, so I just bought a load of those because it was cheaper than buying 3 boxes of Hellblasters. Ask the Games Workshop manager for the bits box. Maybe I should do. Go into the local Games Workshop and say, don't you know who I am? I'm Pete the Wargamer. I don't think that'll go down very well. Right, let's go have a look at my video. Because this is probably the single greatest thing about being a YouTuber, a Warhammer YouTuber, and that is most of the stuff that I paint, I make a video on, and when I inevitably forget how I painted a model, I can just go back and watch the video about how I painted it, so I can remember, which is great because I should make a note of these recipes and stuff, but I wouldn't do unless I was filming them. So this is literally the best thing. Okay, white. So it's Vallejo's white. I spent yesterday like 2 hours assembling my Hellblaster squad with the heavy version of the plasma rifle, and those things are fiddly as hell with those cables and backpacks. They are. I do think they look better, personally, and it's nice that Games Workshop have gotten rid of the weird, arbitrary weapon loadouts that those units used to have. And it's good that those have gone now, and you can kind of feel free to do whatever you wanted to in terms of how you equipped them. Alright, probably should have put a bit more water in here, but oh well. You live and you learn. Okay, let's just pop a little bit of white on there. So yes, it's chipping. Easy peasy. If you've watched pretty much any of my recent videos. I think I've done chipping quite a lot, and especially my Raptors video, I did it in that. Paint on the palette, a little bit of foam, pluck it so you get like a nice uneven edge, dip it in the paint, remove the excess until you get just a small amount in there, and then get the model, and then just gently, probably a little bit too much paint, so let's take that off a little bit. Gently press it over the edges and you get this nice little damaged effect. Yeah, and this is why I don't want to go too white with the airbrushing step, because then if I'd gone too white with the airbrushing, then none of this would actually shown up. So you end up losing an element of detail by going completely white to begin with. You can only go darker when you go completely white. So yeah. I think battle damage really suits Mark III as well. If there's an armor mark that should look rugged and damaged and scratched up, just generally heavily weathered, it is definitely Mark III. Okay, probably a little bit too heavy there, but we can bring that down. There we go. Make sure I don't forget the backpack, because that's also going to be white. And then the claw as well, that's also going to be quite heavily. So we're going over with, I think it's dark umber, if I remember rightly. To add some like deeper scratches where it's gone down to the material beneath the paint. Okay, I think that'll do. I don't want to go too heavy on it. I just want to add a slight amount of chipping effects just to bring out some of those details for later. Oops, a little bit too heavy. Didn't mean to do that actually. That's fine, that'll get painted over later on. Okay, so I'm just going to take a brush now and then add a little bit of water and then start highlighting. I love CGW set up an official bits thing. I mean, they did used to have it, didn't they? If you've watched any of the streams that I've done where I've inevitably gotten sidetracked, and maybe we will do in this stream as well, and looked at the old White Dwarfs, they used to literally have little sections where you could mail order certain parts, but it was only ever the metal stuff. You could order individual sprues though, which was pretty good, and I would like to see a return to that. It'd be really cool just to get a hold of one sprue from a kit. But the thing is, because of the way that the sprues are, most of the sprues are made, is if you look at them, they're usually in threes, kind of like broken up. So it would be really hard to get a single sprue, because if you had one sprue from that set, then they'd just have two leftover sprues from another one. And if no one bought those, they'll just end up with loads and loads of the same sprue over and over again. So yeah, it doesn't really work with plastic kits quite as much, but it would be nice to have something like that come back. So I'm just adding a little bit of extra edge highlights here. Just quite rough again. Don't want to be too pristine. I'm not sure what I'm going to do about these bandings though. I'm not sure to paint the bandings with the bronze or keep it completely white. I'm not 100% sure yet. Oh, those knee pads are going to be... I'm not sure yet. I can't remember what colour I painted them before. I can't remember if the knee pads that I did... Oh, they don't have knee pads. That's why. That's why I've got confused. The the Mark 6 armor doesn't have any knee pads, which is why I didn't paint it before. I'm not sure about those trims. Maybe I will paint them. A little bit of edge highlighting at the top here as well, just to bring out those details. That this is the thing about airbrushing, you often lose some of those edges because, especially on like a surface that you're aiming at, because the paint either side of the edge and the recesses tends to be the same, so you just kind of blends together. So as soon as you start adding highlights, it really helps to bring stuff out. And later on when I add in the washes, I don't know if I'll be doing them on stream just because oil washes are a pain in the arse to work with sometimes, and I don't really feel like having to deal with the added pressure of not spilling my oil paint everywhere. Also, they stink as well, so I don't really want to do it with the windows shut. I want to keep it nice and well ventilated in here whilst I do those. But I think I can do a lot. I think that if I remember rightly, the oil wash is pretty much one of the last steps, so I would be surprised if I get that far. So really getting that scratched effect coming through on the armor now. I'm just going to make sure that these edges are highlighted because I don't want to lose that definition around this area, especially with this being towards the front of the model, facing the area where you're going to most likely look at the model. I want to make sure it's nice and clear and defined because that's where most of the attention is going to be. Right, I'm just going to move my monitor around a little bit because I'm actually struggling to keep. Hopefully the battery will last. Why is it turned off? Okay. Yeah. Right. Okay. I can see the chat's a little bit better as I am painting, which is good. Forbidden juice in the past. This is. Have you seen? People might not have seen. This is just paint, by the way. This isn't like mold or anything. This is literally just the paint that I've been applying in this step. This is a really old Burger King cup that I basically use as my kind of like dumping out point for paints when I'm airbrushing. Just when I've got a little bit more paint left in the reservoir, I just dump it in there. And it just builds up, and it's been building up for quite a while, and I kind of ended up, there you go, I've got a cocktail stick here I was using for something. You can see how deep it is. So if I okay, don't really want to touch it, but you can that's how deep the paint is in this bottom of this cup. That is about 7 years worth of painting gone in there. If you cut it down, you could go through some sort of like, it's like cutting down a tree and seeing the rings of the tree. You can see when there's like a forest fire or something like that in there, or when there's more carbon in the atmosphere. You can see this is when I painted some Imperial Fierce. This is when I painted some Horus Heresy miniatures. Clean out your paint water thoroughly. That isn't my paint. That is literally just the dumping out point. My paint water is actually, this was my my paint pot is, it is messy, but the water in there was literally cleaned out just before. That's only had like 2 paints in there at the moment. But no, that the Burger King cafe is a Burger King cup as well. You can see it. It was like a promotional cup that came with, like, if you bought a coffee or something from Burger King, whenever that was. You'd be able to know when it was based on when I got that cup. That is the paint water you do not want to accidentally drink at all. Evaporate all the water, take the pigment that's left in there, mix it with medium and paint with it. Yeah, pretty much. Because the thing is, the only thing that goes in there is paint and airbrush cleaner. So there's no water in there really, and I think most of the time it's the cleaner ends up evaporating, so it just we lost the stream, but is it back? Are we back? Yeah, I think we are. Okay, cool. Cool, we're back. What are people's thoughts on the new Mark III Marines? Are they worth getting? I mean, this is one of the new Mark III Marines. It's been modified slightly, but the main torso and legs are all from the Mark III kits. The rest are from other places. But no, I quite like them. I like the Mark III kit anyway. I like the style of the Mark III, and the fact that when the Mark VI came out, it almost made the Mark III look childlike, I think, for want of a better phrase. Really, it just didn't look right. It looked the proportions weren't right, and on top of Primaris and other things like that, the scaling just seemed a little bit off. So yeah, it was really welcome for me that they decided to rescale them, because I do prefer that particular kit over the Mark VI. And now that it's been officially released, now that it's out in the wild, I will be eventually, I'm working on some other stuff at the moment, but when I am done, I will definitely be restarting my Horus Heresy conversion series and using that Mark III kit. Part of the reason why I stopped doing that was because of the fact that some of the legions just don't look as good in Mark VI. I think they look better in Mark III. So as soon as I heard the rumours that there's a new Mark coming out, and it was kind of clear that it was either going to be Mark II or Mark III, I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to hold off on this series and wait. And then obviously they've been slightly redesigned, but not too much. They're mostly the same. And yeah, now they're there, I will be returning. I think the next legion that I needed to do was Space Wars, so they are kind of like a good legion to do with Mark III. You can kind of go full on Burning of Prospero style with them. And I mean, the Iron Warriors would have been better with Mark III, but I think I managed to pull it off by covering most of the armor up with a shield and using some other components from the Mark III kit. If I remember right, I used a Mark III head from the... so the head I used was from the Mark III helmet in the vehicles. The shoulder pads were Mark III. So yeah, it's mostly Mark III there. And then there's the Stormcast shield and spear as well. So I got around it. I got around not being able to use a Mark III kit, but yeah, there's going to be a few chapters. Things like Imperial Fist will look a lot better in Mark III than they would do Mark VI. When I get to Raven Guard and probably Alpha Legion, I'll switch back to Mark VI though, because I do think they look good in that style. I'm not sure about Ultramarines. I think Ultramarines, I don't know, it's hard to say. It depends what direction I go with them, I think. I don't know if it's quite as clear cut with Ultramarines. I think there's merits to both armor marks for the Ultramarines. I think Iron Hand's another good one to do. to do with Mark III. But not so much. I mean, yeah, it depends really. Depends what ideas I have to do stuff around them. Some parts will work better with different kits. Anything that's a bit chunkier will work better with this particular Mark III kit than the Mark VI would. But I'm not sure what I'm going to be painting with metallics here, so I'm just going to paint a lot of these areas with the white, and I think, yeah, I think I'm going to stick with the white for most areas. I think that's going to look more striking, at least, especially when I start to add in the washes later and extra chipping and the blood effects, especially. Okay. Imagine the engagement metrics on YouTube if you did Raven God and Mark III. Yeah, the Legion, known for its sneaking and stealth attacks, things like that, in really heavy, chunky Mark III armor, doesn't quite have the same ring to it, does it? With all these great kits coming out for Horus Heresy, all they would need to do is release a Siege of Terror campaign book for an excuse to make a new Mark VII kit. Yeah, it's like we said earlier, it feels like they're really pushing towards the end of the Heresy for the setting of the books. Well, setting of the miniatures, at least, of the entire range. And even as far as maybe even starting to push out past the end of what officially would be, I don't know, when did the Horus Heresy officially end? Because there's a lot of stuff carried on afterwards, so I suppose it's hard to define exactly when was the ending. Mark 6 armor named after the Raven Guard's Primarch. Yeah. It will get a lot of comments. I think my Iron Warriors video actually got quite a lot of comments. People saying, "Oh, you should have done this in Mark III." So yeah, there's definitely precedence there. It's one of those things with when you're on YouTube and things like that, you'll see these like posts and stuff like, oh, if you want to get engagement in your comment section, things like that, you've got to do things like you've got to ask people questions, you've got to do things which directly engage people, make people want to leave a comment. And in my experience, the best way to get people to leave comments is to say something that is, and either mispronounce it first of all, or something that is incorrect, because you can guarantee a lot of people will rush to immediately want to correct you. And YouTube doesn't care. YouTube really doesn't care if it's a negative comment or a positive comment. It just counts it as all engagement. To the point where I suspect that most of the times when people make mistakes in videos, it's completely intentional to get people to point out that mistake, which is it's quite funny. So yeah, think about all the times that you might have commented on a video in the past because there's a mistake in it, and then now think that person possibly and probably did do that mistake on purpose just to get you to engage with it. Such is the dark, shadowy world of YouTube creation. I've got my chat open up on my device here, and it's just I think it must have died when the stream dropped, because it's just not bringing up any of the recent chat. Let's see if we can get it back up again. It's just okay, cool. We've got it back now. Pop out chat. I was thinking, I'm sure someone, because it looks over. I've got my computer there, which is where I'm running the stream through, and I've just got like a monitor here with everything, but it's just broke it. But yeah, where were we? There's a cunning of the Lord. The best way to get a right answer on the internet is to not ask a question, but to post the wrong answer. It's true. It is literally true. You see it all the time, and I think people just take advantage of it on YouTube for that reason. I think I saw one person who said that they basically purposely put in a Discord notification sound in the video, so that it kind of sounded like it was through the video. It wasn't anything related to the video. They just popped it in, just so that people would get annoyed and comment about the fact that there was a Discord notification sound, and it made them check the Discord, even though there wasn't actually anything to notify them. Solitaire, how come you're no longer on Twitch? Well, the thing is, on Twitch it was kind of like, the thing is about being on Twitch versus being on YouTube is that my main audience is already on YouTube. Most of the people who follow me watch me because of my YouTube videos, and they don't necessarily know that I'm on Twitch. If I'm streaming on Twitch, a lot of people will be like, oh, well, I didn't realize you were streaming on Twitch, and then end up missing out. But if it's on YouTube and you subscribe to me, you should get a notification that I've done this. It's easier to do the VODs are much more easier as well, because with Twitch you have to, so to get it on, so it's deleted. The VODs on Twitch are deleted after a couple of weeks, if I remember rightly, and to preserve them and to keep those VODs intact, what you had to do was go into Twitch. You had to request the stream to be downloaded. It would take a few hours then for it to download, so you have to remember to go back and check it again, and then you downloaded it, and then you had to upload it to YouTube and do all the rigmarole for uploading to YouTube to preserve it for longer than like the few days or however long it was that Twitch preserved it for. So a lot of people were basically saying, oh, I wanted to watch this, but I didn't get a chance to watch it live, and we'd be uploading it. So yeah, YouTube just does it automatically. It just uploads it straight away. It takes all that hassle out of it. It's classed as a live stream, so YouTube doesn't hold it against you in terms of uploading a 3-hour video and people not watching the entirety of it. So I didn't have to make a second channel, which I had to do with Twitch. It was just a whole thing. I had another channel to worry about for my VODs, and I had to worry about downloading and uploading them. So yeah, it was easier to be on Twitch, and I think I get more viewers on Twitch and on YouTube than I did on Twitch anyway. So there's a few things which are good on Twitch which I enjoyed. The raid feature was good. It was good if a few other people were streaming at the time. You could just kind of send people over. Twitch doesn't like you streaming. I don't think YouTube cares, but Twitch doesn't like you streaming to YouTube at the same time as you're streaming on Twitch, so which is annoying. Otherwise, I would do. So yeah. I feel like I'm maybe going a bit too heavy on the highlights here, but I don't want to. I want this guy to be pretty scratched up. I'm just going to pick out these little rivets and highlights and stuff like that. Going back to the earlier question that someone left about the new Mark III kit, I will say that in terms of the details, a lot finer. So it has the same rivets and things like that, but they're a lot smaller. So if you're not maybe as quite as confident of a painter, then some of those details might get a little bit lost, which is unfortunate. But on the flip side, if you are a decent enough painter to pick out all those individual rivets, then it does look a little bit better because it's not as in your face kind of thing. They're a little bit more subdued, I guess. I'd say that's one of the biggest things. The details are a little bit more subdued, but they're still there. Twitch just released that you can stream on multiple sites with no downside. They've actually done that now, have they? Because honestly, that was one of the biggest things which made me not want to stream on Twitch, because I was thinking, well, if I'm streaming on YouTube and I'm streaming on Twitch, the only reason you don't want me streaming on both at the same time is just because you want people who would normally prefer to be on YouTube to then go over to Twitch and sign up to Twitch and blah, 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 and watch their adverts, which isn't really fair, because it's like, if people, you should give people the option to choose whatever it is they want. And if anything, I just stopped streaming on Twitch as a result, so I don't really do the but as someone said, I was bullied off Twitch by the painting phase, so we'll blame them. They kept raiding my chats and with nonsensical phrases and really throwing me off my tangent. So yeah, we'll blame them. We'll blame the painting phase. But if that's the case, though, if they have kind of gone back on that and said that they will let you stream on multiple sites at the same time, then I will do that, because I did get a little bit of a following on Twitch, so it'd be nice to keep that. And obviously there's some people who probably would prefer to use Twitch. It made Yankee happy as well, because he can control the polls then, which is good. Okay, I don't want to go too... I mean, this is going to be a model for an army, so I don't want to go too over the top with these details. He is a character, though, so again, he needs to be, to a certain degree, a little bit more detailed maybe than some of the other guys. But again, I don't have much time to paint this. I need to do some other models for the army as well, so we shall see. We shall see how far I get. Okay, let's leave that where it is. What time are we on? 8:15. I feel like Games Workshop's new designs are very inconsiderate of new painters. Yes, so interestingly, I was having a conversation about this the other day, and one of the things which is very obvious, if you go back and look at any... I'm just going to take a break for a few seconds. We're going to talk about this. I also need to check out what the next paint was. So whilst I'm doing that, I'm going to have a rant about something. So, when I first started Warhammer, it was 20 years ago, something like that. And some of the models that were available at the time were very chunkier, much bigger in their... Okay, go straight to the blue. Okay, that's nice and straightforward. And just do the shoulder pads. And then I think it was sky blue. Yeah, chipping and then dark on bar. Okay, that's straightforward. So yeah, when I first started, some of the models that were released back then were quite chunky and quite big, and the details were very easy to pick out, and it was a case of the models maybe weren't as technically well made. Scales were off. Some things were probably chunkier than they had to be because the sprue technology at the time wasn't as good. But what I felt like was, at the time, everything was easier to paint because it was bigger. So if you were a brand new painter and coming into the hobby, you had these really... I'm just going to go on face cam actually, because I'm just kind of ranting at the moment. So yeah, if you came into the hobby, you've never painted any models before, then whilst the models were small, they weren't ridiculously small. They were still approachable. You still had kind of enlarged faces, so you could go a little bit heavier on the painting of the heads, and especially things like Space Marines, they were very chunky and blocky. And over time, there's been two things that have happened. The first one is the changing of the kits. The kits have gotten... They've kind of, weirdly, they've gotten bigger, but then the details have shrank. So it's kind of like had the weird effect of making the models more detail rich at the same time. If you look at like a lot of the new Space Marine stuff that came out in the last, since Primaris got released, some of the things like Blade Guard, Stern Guard, Sword Brethren for the Black Templars, Sisters of Battles, things like that. These are really incredibly detailed models, and they look great when someone who is very prolific at painting and can spend a lot of time painting them attacks them and does a really kind of good job of painting them, and they look really cool. So you've suddenly got models which are a lot harder to... I don't need this glove on anymore. I feel like I hate the feeling of vinyl gloves. So you've suddenly got people who are coming into the hobby. They're seeing these really, really good paint jobs that Games Workshop put out. There's things like social media and Facebook and Instagram and YouTube as well, where you've got people who are like painting and sharing these incredible, absolutely ridiculously well painted models on these incredibly well detailed models, and it's probably putting new painters off to a degree. Whereas when I first started, and we're going to go on another side tangent here because I haven't done it for a while, so buckle up. Okay, the loop deck didn't work, so we're going to have to do this. We're going to do this manually. So right, we're going to go on to the Warhammer Vault. Actually, I'm just going to switch cameras for time being, just in case I have to enter my password again. We're going to enter the Warhammer Vault, and I'm going to explain what I mean, because the Warhammer Vault is, in my opinion, one of the only reasons to subscribe to Warhammer Plus, because it's really cool to go back and look at the old White Dwarfs, even though they haven't added any new White Dwarfs since July. So, not happy with that. They were adding like one every week, and then they suddenly just decided to stop it. So, yes, Warhammer Vault. Right, let's click on the oldest one. So this is 2003. So this is a few months. This is probably a few months after I started collecting White Dwarf, and maybe about a year after I started collecting Warhammer. So yeah, if you look at the way that these models are presented in these early editions, the painting quality is decent. It's good, but it's not as high quality as you would see today. These are well painted models, but if you were to see that on the box art, if these were released today, the painting quality would be much better. The same with these guys. These guys look pretty much like the fur has been dry brushed, the torsos have been base coated, washed, and then given a quick highlight. There's not loads. A little bit more going on with this one, but again, there's not a massive degree of extremely high quality painting, and you can see what I mean by when you start looking at some of the models that have been... So some of these models that have been released, I think every now and again a few of those old models remain and they get repainted for the web store. So the quality improves, and it's good. It shows off the models better. Oops. But at the same time, I think it also makes it more imposing for new people. And it'd be nice to see, if you bought a box of Warhammer, the front of the box can have the really nicely painted models that are painted by Heavy Metal, but on the back, put some pictures of those models painted by a base coat and a wash, just to show people this is what they'll look like. This is what you can make them look like yourself easily. What we're looking at, Chaos. This is my rant time now. This is me showing my age. Right, so let's find a model that... There we go. Did we see this one? I mean, this one is not actually... This one's probably closer to what I'm kind of talking about. This is a character model. I don't think the painting is incredible. If you compare that to one of the other models from the Beastman range. No, Beasts of Khorne. No, Beasts of Chaos, not Blades of Khorne. Right. Yeah, okay. Beasaw. This is one of the more recent ones. This was released this year, I think. So if you look at the quality of painting compared to that, there is a big difference. Because if you look at just something as basic as... look at the cloth, for example. So the cloth has quite clearly been painted with a base coat. It's probably been given like a wash and then a layer, and then maybe a little bit of like a tiny little edge highlight around the edges. But you've got areas where it's a little bit patchy. There's a little bit of overspill. It's not really pristine. There's a very... You can see here where the highlight isn't quite of perfect, and there's like a little bit of a strong edge highlight there. And you compare it to this one, it's got a really nice smooth transitions. The edge highlights are really crisp on the edges. There's not really much of the mistakes. You look at the skull here, it's got like a greenish shading in the recesses. There's a few different colors and hues going on there. The wood, the highlighting around the hand, and how like this skin tone progresses. It goes from the hand down to the chest. Same down here. Yeah, there's so much difference, but this is much more of an achievable paint job for a lot of people. And then if you go back to this, you can see that this is kind of repeated. These are much more achievable paint jobs. And in a way, I actually think that these kind of paint jobs were more attainable. It seemed, look at the Space Marines, look at these Space Wolves. These aren't like to the quality that you see stuff painted to today. If you look at the same models, that, I mean, if you probably get like the new Khorne Berserkers and compare them to how these old ones were painted, you'll see. But they look good. They still look good models. I still looked at these and thought, oh, these are really cool, let's buy them. But I also felt like I could paint them as well. But maybe that's just me. Very detailed models take ages to paint, but always look good. A not very detailed model can be detailed through kitbashing, sculpting, freehanding, battle damage is still attainable by beginners. I think the problem is with a high detailed model, there are certain things you can do, but I think also, I think it's the combination, to be honest. The biggest problem is having that combination of really well detailed models and obviously understandably wanting to show off those models to people who are buying them. So I'm going to find something else. This is the Terror campaign. So you want to show off. You've spent a lot of time sculpting and producing those models and making a kit that looks good. So you want to show it off as good as possible. But then I think you often end up showing off models that are maybe a little bit out of a lot of people's ability to paint. But yeah, I don't know. I just felt like a lot of this older stuff was much more. It just felt like more attainable, I guess. If I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong, but this may be. I think that's the guy who currently runs up the Army Painter. I think it's the CEO of the Army Painter. Let's see if it mentions the names of the people. Oops. Does it say who's participating in the battle? No, it doesn't say. Oh, hang on. Is it got here? Yeah, there you go. That's the that is the guy who is the Army Painter CEO. I think it's him. It looks like him, and he's got the same first name. So yeah, I think it is him. Swidball, thank you very much for the. I think is that Swedish krona. I think 100 of that. I do not know what that is in pounds, but thank you very much all the same. Thank you very much. Couldn't you scrape and cut out the details if you're new and find them overwhelming? I started painting not too many years ago, mostly Tyranids. So I think Tyranids are probably one of those good models where they allow you to do a lot of detailing and stuff if you want to, but because they're organic, you can pretty much paint them one color and just wash them if you want to. I think when you have a model where, especially like Sisters of Battle, a lot of that stuff is sculpted onto the models and it actually ends up being quite difficult to remove the detailing. So I personally quite like models that aren't as well detailed, I guess. I like being able to add my own details because I often find myself removing details when I do. So yeah, it could just be personal. I would like to it'd be interesting to know what everyone else kind of thinks, if whether they feel like things have changed for the better, changed for the worse, whether or not there is a way of balancing out those two aspects. Maybe, like I said, having the front of the box being more pro-painted and the back of the box being more like everyone else is painted. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see that. 100 SEK is £7.49. Well, thank you very much for £7.49. It paid for. I think it paid for most of my. Yeah, it paid for most of my Howlblaster parts that I bought for the for the from Bitsbox not too long ago. So thank you very much for those. Thank you. They were on you. I appreciate it. Yeah. Anyway. I think it's a change in philosophy they've had. The models are designed for painters. The rules are designed for competitions. I agree. They've always kind of said, "Oh, we're a model making company first, a rules making company second." Yankee Pete ranting about old models and their bad paint job. Why don't even painters? I'm not even saying they're bad paint jobs. I think they're normal paint jobs. I think those are the kind of paint jobs where like that is. I think these are paint jobs that if you sat someone down and was like, okay, this is how you paint, this is what paints you need to use, and this is a few different steps, and this is how you use washes, someone could achieve a lot of these, basically. And with a little bit of practice. They're neat, at least, I suppose, but they're not overly complicated. They don't have really strong use of glazes and blends and texturing and really stupid nano-fine edge highlights that have been built up over 3 stages. Yeah, anyway, I'm just ranting. I really like these old models. They kind of... There's probably a vast degree of nostalgia in that, but yeah, there's definitely something which I enjoy about these. Anyway, speaking of painting, let's go back to painting models and not ranting about how the painting has changed in the last few years. I wouldn't say last few years. I think it's been like that probably since about 10 years at least. Maybe I'm showing my age. Feels nice knowing I semi-paid for a nice brew kit. Well, I'll be making good use of those in my ongoing... forgot the chapter. Raptors. My Raptor series. That's literally what I bought them for. I picked them up for some future videos I have ideas for. So yeah, you will literally be you have directly contributed to some of those, so I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Right, so we are... Oh, need to shut up a little bit more, actually. The shift to digital sculpting allowed them to add tiny little details, yeah. I think it was definitely with the CAD stuff, when they started moving away from traditional sculpting, I think it definitely had a difference. I mean, I don't mind it. I've been painting for long enough where I can paint those details and I can make the most of those details, and if I don't like them, I can remove them. But I'm just kind of thinking about whether that's the same... whether that's as straightforward for new players personally, and that's who I'm thinking about. So this is Pro Acryl. I haven't used these for quite a while actually, but I used these on my original. That's why all the paint's not mixed very well. But I used them on my original range, so yeah, we're going back to them for this. But to make sure everything lines up after all. So yeah, out of interest, what is everyone now? Even if you're not commenting, just engage. Grant me this engagement. Appease the YouTube gods and do some engagement for me. What is a model that you think, in the current range, is too detailed for its own good? And what model, if you kind of have maybe one which you think is just detailed enough, maybe two, maybe one or two, one that you think is maybe overly detailed, maybe the one that you think is just right. Obviously, if you don't agree with me at all, then feel free not to say anything, or you can just put I don't agree with anything you'll say. Call, yeah, call is very. I think a lot of things from the AdMech are very much in that line of being overly detailed. I think also there's the thing with like Scutari as well is you not only have the fact where you have these really heavily detailed models and parts, but you also have this whole aspect of this mixture of materials. So you not only have metal, you have cloth, you have leather, you have lenses and pipes and so many different materials to paint, different textures, and yeah, that can end up causing just as many problems in my opinion. Thousand Suns, too detailed, whole line, yeah, very, very, very much so. I'd actually be tempted for Thousand Suns just to literally go back and actually build a Mark, using these Mark 3s. I think they'd be really cool to build 1,000 Suns using these guys. Great name, Sharts McGinty. Thank you very much for your $10. You've paid for the second half of that order, so thank you very much. You are also helping to support the Raptors Fund. That's what I'm going to call it. We need to have some sort of ongoing poll. But you've paid for the... I brought some Raven Guard grenade arms and also a bunch of shoulder pads, so thank you very much. Yeah, we got some good... So Thousand Suns, Centaurians are too much. I actually think, I kind of agree with you there. I think Centaurians would be okay if... They would be a lot better if they didn't have all of the extra kind of filigree and detailed extra parts and stuff like that. I think if you just had the armor plates and they're just kind of like really solid, chunky pieces of armor, I think they would look a lot better in my opinion. And I've actually seen people who've gone away and scraped all those components away and flattened everything out, and they do look a lot better in my opinion. Things like pipes and grenades and grenade launchers and things like that are okay in my opinion. I'll keep saying my opinion, but yeah, I think there's sometimes too much detail and it takes away. Bobby G, too detailed. Yeah, I've got a Gilman. I've got two Gilmans actually that I want to use for kit bashes, but I kind of keep convincing myself not to because I know how difficult it's going to be to paint. Sisters Sigmar, just too far detailed for rank and file. Yeah. I would actually be inclined to agree. I would be inclined to agree. Normal Chaos Marines, yes, I wholeheartedly agree that normal Chaos Marines are very detailed. Anyone who collects normal Chaos Space Marines and paints all of those edge linings, which are all like different shapes and sizes and thicknesses and widths and have little protruding bits of bone and teeth and all sorts, and you've got to paint all those, wow. Yeah, hats off to you. Hats off to anyone who paints Chaos Space Marines. Again, I genuinely think that if I was going to collect Chaos Space Marines, I would literally just get a Mark 3 kit. This is why I hope that in the future, going back to some of the discussions we had in the past about which Horus Heresy armor mark I would like to see next, I think a Mark 5 kit would be really cool, because a Mark 5, you could use it as a basis for like Chaos Space Marines, like less Chaosy Space Marines. Just cheat with washes. Yeah, but you can cheat to a certain degree. If you're painting Iron Warriors, you can, because you can pretty much just kind of go paint everything silver, use like a yellow contrast paint to add in the gold banding, but you still have to paint the difference between the banding and the non, unless you're doing something like, there are a few chapters like, there's that Emperor's Children successor one, which is like half flesh, half purple. I can't remember which one it is, but that one doesn't have the trims painted. I mean, I collect Raptors. I don't paint my trims on my Raptors Marines. And my Raptors Marines literally have 2 shoulder pads worth of trims to paint, and I don't do any of it. So I'm just drying the shoulder pads. Out of interest, is it actually... What's going on with the camera? It's like someone's smeared Vaseline over the lens there. It's like a Top Gear shot. Is it cheaper to run Mark 3 than it is to buy Chaos Space Marines? Or is it more expensive to run Mark 3? I'm getting off tangent again. My excuse is that I'm waiting for the blue paint to dry properly. Let's have a look. Because this is one thing that I've actually been having a little bit of a think about. I do a lot of thinking about different kitbashing ideas and things like that. So you can all kind of come along with me on this thought path. Because the thing is about Chaos Space Marines is I am wholly in agreement with the idea that they have a lot going on, and that's cool. If you're into that kind of thing, that's cool. They definitely look chaosy. But I do feel like sometimes there's too much going on and they end up being a little bit overly detailed. So let's say, for example, you decide you want to run a 10-man squad of Chaos Space Marines and you decide to buy a box of Mark III because they are released now, aren't they? Or are they on pre-order still? Oh yeah. So £45 for a Mark III tactical squad, and you get 20 models. So you get double the amount of models. Now, the one thing that you don't get, though, you've got to keep this in mind, is you don't get any heavy weapons with that. You don't get any special weapons. So if you want to run the squad of special weapons and heavy weapons, you also need to buy the weaponry upgrade sets. So that's £28, but that gives you 30 of those weapons. So that's plenty. You could buy just 3 boxes of each, and that's the whole army done. So you would need to buy some of those. And the only thing you don't get is the close combat weaponry. That is the one thing you are missing. So if you want to run them with chainswords, you're kind of hard to look. You're going to have to run them with bolters. But saying that, there is a pipeline, there is a timeline of releases, and the jump pack assault marines are on there. So there will be availability of plastic chainsword arms, which is pretty good. So yeah, you could... Yeah, I didn't realize the price was that different. That's incredible. This actually makes these guys seem a lot cheaper than I thought, actually. I genuinely thought when I saw these, I thought it was 10. £45 for 20 Marines. And then you can get them cheaper than that as well, obviously, through third-party sellers. But that's actually surprising, personally. Yeah, so I think if you were building a full army, it would work out cheaper to run these guys. You would have to probably do a little bit of tactic of like. Thing is, you could actually run it in the sense that you could say, okay, well, these guys are a small army of that legion that got trapped in a warp storm and has just like been spat out. So they're still like against the Imperium, and the Imperium would still view them as being enemies if they're still like adorned in the old World Eaters iconography and stuff like that. So yeah, that's Pete's top tip for the stream. If you want to collect Chaos Space Marines, collect a Horus Heresy army instead, and just maybe add a few extra spikes here and there if you want to. What if one squad of Chaos Marines and the Horus Heresy armor? Yeah, I think that'd be interesting to see the scale comparison, actually. I've not seen if anyone's done a scale comparison. These are smaller than Primaris, and these guys are smaller than Primaris, which might mean that they're similar kind of level, the same size. Yeah. So you could, in theory then, if you picked up these, let's see how many... So you'd get enough chainswords, so you could swap out the chainswords, I guess, and just keep it the chainswords. You can mix and match shoulder pads, mix and match the marks, I suppose. 1 box of these, and that would also give you access to some special weapons straight out of the box. You get 2 sprues of these, don't you? Is there enough models? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10. So this is everything. You get 2 sprues. Okay. So you don't really get enough shoulder pads to bulk out the 2 units. That's the only thing. New Chosen and Mark IV are roughly the same. Okay. So yeah, I think you could do it. Terminators, again, aren't really a problem because you just get some Cataphracti. or Tartarus, something like that, and just say the Chaos Terminator squad. Havocs, again, they're probably even easier because you literally just buy a box of Legion heavy weapons and you can run as many of the variants of the weaponry. How I got my phone? If I'm not mistaken, on the previous rules edition, you could only, they still had the rule where you could only equip them what's in the box, but I think now you can actually, based on the Devastator's rules at least, you can pretty much give them whatever you want in terms of equipment. So if I go Chaos Space Marines, Index, data sheets, Havocs. No, not the Combat Patrol Index. So yeah, so War Gear options. Any number of Havocs each have their Havoc autocannon or Havoc last cannon replaced with one of the following: an autocannon, heavy bolter, last cannon, missile launcher, or Reaper chain cannon. So yeah, if you use, this is actually a better option if you want to run Havocs with multiples of the same weapon, because this kit I think comes with 2 of each one, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, it might even do that actually. Yeah, you get literally 1 of each one in this kit. And then special weapons. So yeah, it is actually better to run these guys as Horus Heresy, stick them on the bigger bases. Yeah, so you get 2 autocannons, 2 heavy bolters, 2 last cannons, 2 missile launchers, and 1 Reaper chain cannon. If you bought the weapon upgrade sprue, you could literally get... You could get a whole squad of chain cannons, no problem. How many did you get in there? 10. If you bought a box of this and a box of Mark III Space Marines, you could run 2 squads of Havocs for £73, which is cheaper than buying 2 of these boxes, and you would still have 10 space. You'd still have 10 Mark IIIs left. Wow, I think this is a video. I think this is a video idea coming up. Building a Chaos Space Marine army for cheaper than it costs to buy it from the Chaos Space Marine range. Now look at what the minimal size squad of breaches costs you. Is that the Horus Heresy ones? Are you talking about? Less risk of self-stabbing. Yeah. £45 for 5 models. And the old resin as well. I'm guessing that we'll probably see these getting released either as plastic upgrade sprues or maybe as like a resin upgrade kit, I guess. They are 10 men minimum and they come in 5-man squads. Jesus. I thought that the Scryer Acolytes were bad. That's actually kind of got me thinking, yeah, if it is more cost effective to run, yeah, because you have the heavy weapons and missile launchers and heavy bolters in that kit, plasma cannons, melter guns, and heavy flamers in this one. Auto cannons. So the problem is you don't have they're like the 2-barreled auto cannons, if I'm not mistaken. If you wanted the theming, you could just run all the characters as Chaos Space Marine models. You could still run your unit leaders as a Chaos Space Marine sorcerer, Master of Executions, things like that. You could still keep those models. Vehicle kits, again, you can just run the Horus Heresy versions, which I think look better in my opinion anyway. Demon Princes you can't really get around, but Chosen, I don't know what you'd do with Chosen. You'd have to make them look a little bit more ornate, I guess. But there is a Vindicator, there are Predators, yeah, pretty much everything apart from like the obviously more Chaos Demon Engine stuff. But I think that's viable, more viable than I thought it would be actually. Definitely cost effective. you could run Halbrutes as... You'd have to run them as Contemptors, wouldn't you? I think they're too small to be anything other than a Contemptor. But they have the same weapon options, pretty much. They have Melters, Fists, yeah, so much stuff. Start a new Chaos Army Night Lords, please. Well, I kind of already have in a way. I've kind of got a preview of one, interestingly, because I keep talking about this now. Where is it now? Okay, so I can't remember if I showed this on the last stream. So this is a Night Lord that I built, and this is a few people I've mentioned this a few times on streams, but I'm gonna show off something else in a second. So this is using some components from the range of bits that I'm going to be hopefully releasing. But yeah, this is basically just a Tartarus Night Lord with a few. That's the hand, the rib cage, and the bones are from the kit. So yeah, that's kind of like where you could do. Night Lords would actually work really well. Let's do a quick. Let me just get the link. Let me get the link from whoever I sent the link to last. Bear with me. Give me 1 second. So yeah, so basically I am currently working on a oh, we've got another super chat. Thank you very much. Yes, do it. Please start a new Chaos Army. I think I did. Oh, I didn't. Yeah, it's the same one. It just comes through later. But yeah, thank you very much. I would love to try and pronounce your name, but I feel like I would horrendously insult you if I did do so. So I'm not going to. So it's Mache Svek. Give me a rating out 0 out of 10. How well I got that one. Right. So I think let me just double check this is the right link. So this is a. Oh, that's not the right link. How do I get that back? Bear with me. I'll get that in a second. But 1 second. Let me just try and find it. There's a link that I sent that I can use as like a. Right, I think I've got it now. Is that it? Copy link. I'm sure this is very interesting to watch, but I'm just making sure that this is the right link before I put it in Firefox. Okay, cool. Right, I'm gonna share something. This is a exclusive. Thank you very much to all the people who are currently watching the stream. 163 of you. Thank you very much. You all have early access. This is a sneak preview. So basically, yeah, I'm working on a Kickstarter. Kickstarter's hopefully going to be released sometime later this month, maybe early November, depends on how things line up. This is all still work in progress, so things might change. We'll go. So this is basically the Kickstarter project, and this is a sneak preview of it. I'm letting you all have a quick look. So this is essentially a dead animal bits kit that I'm going to hopefully try and get in production. It's going to be a plastic kit, and these are all the parts that will be available on it. They are just, it's going to be called dead animal bits for obvious reasons. There's going to be hands, teeth, jaw bones, antlers, bones, rib cages, bones, horns, bones, lots of stuff, feathers as well. And this is just kind of like a mock-up that I've done for the sprue. So you can see one sprue would get you lots of individual components, because one of the things that annoys me is when you buy a kit and you have to buy all the components from bits resellers, because there's only like 2 of those components on there. So the idea of it is, this will probably change, but it's just an idea to for a standard kind of almost like Games Workshop scale sprue, that's what it is. It's going to be, if you're familiar with War Games Atlantic, then those are the guys who will be responsible for manufacture. So it's not going to be me. I'm not going to be manufacturing in my garage. I'm actually going to get someone who's an expert in it. They're going to be doing it. And these are some of the example models that I've done. So this is like a bit of a corn corrupted demon thing. I kind of tried to do like a corn Chaos Spawn. So I basically put in a load of the ram's horns and just kind of made a little bit of a mock-up, so you can see all the parts down here are the parts from my kit. There's an Orc Brute who's got some teeth attached to his blade, and then some horns on his shoulders, and then there's the Night Lord's model that I just showed you as well. You can see there the components which are actually from the kit versus the components which are standard. But yeah, that's basically it. That's kind of all I've got so far. It's gonna be really, really straightforward campaign. If you want to support it, you can basically just buy a sprue or multiples of the sprue, and then if it gets made, then yeah, it goes live. So I'm still working on it. Still a few details that need to be ironed out. But yeah, hopefully within a month's time from here, this will be live. So yeah, fingers crossed. But yeah, I've tried to think of things which will be useful. So there's a few bits in there which are useful for Night Lords players. There's a hooked hand, a hooked head. There's two different spiked hands as well. So they're really good for Night Lords players. There's rib cages, just bones and stuff like that. There's teeth. Carcharodon players, these jaw bones. These antlers are pretty good for a lot of chaos stuff. Beastmen. The antlers are more for, I thought they're better for like fantasy stuff. So if you want to do some stuff for the old world or Age of Sigmar or even historicals, they're all kind of like scaled accordingly. There's a couple of birds. There's a tiny little bird skull. Can you start to see it? I don't know if you can see it. It's right next to my cursor there. But it definitely needs to be scaled up. These are the prototypes. These are all the 3D printed prototypes. But I think that needs to be scaled up because it's too small. It's accurately scaled at bird skull, because if you look at a human head there, it's about right the size, but it's too small for a model. But I've got a bigger bird skull as well there. But yeah, that's basically it so far. It's a really straightforward thing. I'm not going to be having any stretch goals or anything like that because it is literally just the sprue. If it gets funded, I'll make the sprue, and then it will hopefully be available through after the Kickstarter as well as like a product that official product that I can buy. But yeah, that's basically it. It's meant to be kind of like something you would pair with the Citadel Skulls set. So you would have the Citadel Skulls set, and this would have stuff in it which it doesn't share stuff between the two. Basically, the idea is that you can have both of them, and you can use them both to kind of work together to add a little bit of extra detail on your models. But yeah, anyway, yeah, that's that. So yeah, I've been kind of tinkering, which is why there isn't a video today. Normally I've kind of been getting a video out every 2 weeks, but I've been kind of working flat out on that the last 2 weeks. So yeah, there's not really been any video stuff. But yeah, anyway, going back to my original point was you could potentially build a Chaos Space Marine army for cheaper than you could do by buying Chaos Space Marine kits if you bought Horus Heresy kits. But yeah, anyway. Cool. Oh, I got 5 out of 10 for the pronunciation of your name. Okay, I'll work on it. Sponsor the video yourself with it. I could do, yeah. I'll do a little sponsored section as well there. Are these 3D modeled or sculpted? So they're 3D modeled, just to make it easier, because the company which I'll be printing with, they'll be not printing with the company that I'll be casting the molds with. It's all works easier to have it with 3D sculpted models, and I will actually be properly crediting as well my sculptors on that Games Workshop. Make a Druid Librarian by putting the horns on the Space Marine helmets. Well, I did try to scale them. There's a few. I did play around with some really, really tiny versions of the scales, but they were just far too small. They were like incredibly small. I don't know. I think they could be cast. I think you could get them on a sprue. But I think when I sent them to the person who would be responsible for actually making the mold and working out everything, then they were like, oh yeah, they could be, but I just do not think they would be workable as components at all. They would be far too small. And I kind of feel like I'm going back on the whole thing with what I said earlier about having far too small components and kits these days. But yeah, anyway, let's get back to painting this guy. This is what we actually started the stream to do. I feel like I got majorly sidetracked on this particular video. Just excited to talk about it. It's just something that's been I've been kind of working on in the background for months now, and not really wanted to talk too much about it because I wasn't sure kind of how well it would come together in the end, and how well the stuff when it's sculpted would look, and how good things would look painted, and yeah. It's a purely selfish kit though, really. It's just so I can have lots of feathers and little components that I use a lot of, like the rib cages. I've designed. I wanted them so that the rib cage would be able to go over like a Space Marine pauldron. So if you want to do something like Legion of the Damned, you'd have just a load of femurs, a load of rib cages. You could chop them up as you needed to because it's plastic, easy peasy to work with, and then yeah, go from there. There you go. We've got the World Eater's colours in place now. That's all we need. If we didn't do anything else in this video, we've at least made him look more like a World Eater. He'll look better against my other models in my army now, at least. So what was the next thing? It was basically sky blue chipping, I think. Yeah. Right, so I'm going to mix this up. I'm absolutely going to be using that Chaos Marine Mark III army idea. You get way more out of the parts as well. Yeah, I think so. I think it's one of those things which is going to be... it's going to be interesting to see when... Because they're supposed to be releasing a command squad, like a Legion command squad as well. I think that's one of the things that they're supposed to be releasing. They're supposed to be releasing... there's a new army that's been teased as well. So I don't know if that's going to be... Solar Auxilia, or whether or not it's going to be Adeptus Mechanicus. Either way, there's a whole new range of models you can use in 40k as well. I really like the Horus Heresy vehicles as well. I think the Demos pattern Rhinos and Predators and Vindicators will look better. I think the Spartan is a really nice looking Land Raider. You've got jet bikes. The bikes, yeah, because Chaos Space Marine bikes are really old. If you stuck some of the jet bikes in, the Horus Heresy jet bikes, I think that would look really cool. I wonder what the price they are. This is the last thing I'm going to look at now. I'm not even going to switch to the switch to it because I want to see how much the bikes are, because those are really old. Those are really, really old kits now. I remember having one of the bikes years and years ago. It's like one of the first Chaos models I bought, I think. Armies of Chaos, Chaos Space Marines. They're still available, aren't they, the bikes? I'm sure I saw them when I was scrolling through. Yeah. Okay, so £27.50 for 3 Chaos Bikers. Whereas, obviously the prices will vary depending on where you are, but Fast Attack. So they're £40. So you're paying an extra £12.50, but you are buying a much better looking kit, a much more modern kit, and yeah. Are they on the same bases as well, actually? 60mm round bases versus 75mm oval bases. So you probably have to like switch out the bases, I reckon, just to make it a little bit more, and probably keep them lower to the ground. But yeah, no, I think that could work. Anyway, back to what I was saying. Oh no, I did know that I wasn't doing anything. I just didn't want to get sight. I knew that if I was on Firefox, if you could see it, I'd stay on there for longer. I purposely did it so that I wouldn't be as distracted by it all. But yeah, there's definitely something there. I think there's. I feel like I'm surprised I haven't seen it, because it's completely feasible even with the Mark 6 stuff. But I think Mark 3 stuff just looks better for Chaos, especially for Iron Warriors. That's the thought. An Iron Warriors force would be really cool, actually. Oh, now you've got me thinking. Okay, Same as principles before. This is sky blue, so this is slightly brighter blue than what we had before. I'm just going to dip that off on something that's not. There, that's better. Okay. And then let's do a little bit of an edge highlight as well, just to bring out some of the edges. A lot of this will be blended out really when I come to do the oil washes later on, but at least for the time being. Trying to add a tiny little bit of extra definition just along those edges. So this is a little bit thinned out as well, so it goes on really easily, but then as it dries it fades out a little bit, so it's not as intense as doing a really kind of unwatered down paint. We also need to add some markings on that later on. So yeah, we still need some kind of... We still need some tech priest colours on this, don't we? So I need to incorporate... I might just paint over the knee pads with red. There are some nice reds in this range. Burnt red. There we go. We'll use that. There's also bold pyrrole red that we can use as an edge highlight. Oh, let's try it again. Right, hang on. Let me get my headphones. I'm gonna put your name into a pronunciation thing because you've been so kind in supporting the stream. Once again, I am going to go to the effort of making sure that I get your name pronounced correctly. Right. Why can I hear myself? How to pronounce that? Okay, hang on. I think my audio is coming from a different source than I want it to. Why is it coming from there? Dread Parrot Down, thank you very much for joining the chat. Oh, here we go. Mate. Is that the first one? I've got the first name, I think. Mate. And then the surname. Mate Svech. Mate Svech. That's what the internet's telling me. So is that how good out of 10 is that one? Last time was 5 out of 10. Do we have an improvement here? Will you ever make a Haldrake? I'd love to see what you do with it. So I've used the Haldrake kit before. What do I use it? I use it on the Kadai Destroyer. Close enough. You just don't want me to keep trying to butcher the name. I think you just kind of want to put me out of my misery at this point, don't you? Just like, just give up, Pete. Don't try anymore. Keep your terribly poor understanding of foreign languages out of the streams. Although speaking of poor understanding of foreign languages, so I had a few friends who were in Essen for the big kind of tabletop game event that goes on there each year, and they said that it was really really good fun. So I've kind of I'm gonna try and get over there next year, get over across to Germany. So I need to really make an effort to get back to learning German again, because I was doing all right at it. I think I wasn't like good enough to hold a conversation with like a native speaker or anything, but I could order something in a restaurant or maybe get a hotel room or ask for directions or something like that. But I kind of just got out of it, so it'd be nice to start learning again. And if I've actually got a trip, which is roughly a little bit less than a year away, it's kind of like an end point goal to try and learn. We'll see. But I'd like to give it a go. It looks like quite a good event, to be honest. And also, Yankee said he was going to give me biscuits, so all the more reason to go. We can try some German biscuits. Now, so I've been to Austria. I've driven through Germany when I was at school. We went on like a year 9 ski trip in Austria, and we all jumped on a coach because it was the cheapest way of getting 30 odd kids plus teachers down to Austria. So we were on the bus for probably a day and a half, I think it was, of driving, and just kind of a constant driving. And I'll address the picture in a second. We will we'll do that in a second. Dread Pirate Down, quick question: How easy was the backpack to put together? It was actually really straightforward. So the backpack is a single piece from the Cataphrone kit, and then the arms are literally just also parts from the same Cataphrone kit. So yeah, it's pretty straightforward. The only thing I did was, I think I trimmed down one of the ball joints here so I could attach it, and then just attach some ball bearings into that. Anyway, so we drove down to Austria, and it was such a ridiculously long trip. And then we went skiing, and one of the guys, so before the event we had like a dry ski slope, so it's like one of those ones where they have like a plastic astroturf kind of thing but on a slope, so you could practice skiing. And there was a guy who was we were kind of like trying to get some lessons in to learn how to kind of do the basics of skiing before we got there, and one of the guys actually broke his arm on the dry ski slope before we even got there, so he couldn't go on the trip because he had a broken arm. So that was like completely dashed his dreams. And then, oh no, it wasn't that trip. It was a different trip. It was when we went to. No, the problem, I'm getting confused. So a little bit later on, we went on a school trip to Paris, and it was the Year 11's trip. So in Year 11 towards the end of Year 11, most people are 16 by the end of Year 11 in the UK. And in France, you can legally buy alcohol at age 16. So as you can imagine, sending a bunch of 16-year-olds to Paris and then letting us go to a mall kind of shopping centre which has a supermarket attached to it is a recipe for disaster, because a lot of those teenagers will buy alcohol where it's legal to buy alcohol. So yeah, that happened, and a few people got incredibly, probably like medically irresponsibly drunk as well from that. So that kind of we all had to have like a big sit down lecture. But I was that typical kind of nerd person who just doesn't I still don't drink, but yeah, I didn't drink at the time, so I was just kind of sit there feeling quite smug because I just hadn't partaken. But yeah, one guy literally just couldn't go out for the rest of the day because it was just that bad. Yeah, so that was fun. But yeah, going back to what I was originally saying, I would like to go back to Germany because I didn't really get to see much of Germany. I drove through it a little bit on the way to Austria, and I'm not going to offend any Austrians or Germans by saying, "No, they're pretty much the same thing, aren't they?" So I imagine that the kind of the divide is similar to just the divide that you find between English people and Americans. I forgot all the French I learned in school. I think I did as well. The only thing I can remember, which is wrong, and the only reason I remember it is because someone said it thinking it was something correct, but it's just a phrase that's just stuck in my head, is "Je suis le gare," which is like "I am train station," because someone had like a speaking exam and completely forgot what the word was that they wanted to say and just said "le gare," which is like train station or station. But I think it literally translates. It's not even "I am a train station." It's "I am the train station." Which is great because it's just English people trying to speak other languages is just hilarious. It really is. I think I did 3 years of required French and I did 2 years of required German. But I say required, it was like 1 lesson a week. So 1 hour a week of language. And I can barely remember anything from all the German that I know, which isn't much, has been learned after school. But I didn't take it as for my final years. So in the UK, it could be it's changing, I think, depending on which type of school, but there are academies or something now. You can end up doing more or less languages. Ours was French and German. You had to do one language. So I did French. Wait, hang on. I think I did French in the first year. The second year we did French and German. The third year we did French and German. And then if you didn't choose to do a language as your GCSE, you didn't do any languages in your final year. So I didn't. So, yeah. In hindsight, I would have liked to have done German as a language, but I probably would have forgotten most of what I learned then, and probably would have been in the same situation. So maybe it's a good idea that I didn't do that, because, yeah. I think I only really had the interest to learn a language as an adult. I really don't think that 16-year-old me had any interest in learning languages, because everything's in English, isn't it? Okay. What was next? Was it the Dark Umber, I think, for scratches and stuff? Could you do the silver arms and power axe in red? Yeah, it could do, actually, yeah, because I quite like the red, and I think maybe that's a good idea. It would still keep the model in theme. I think that's a good idea, actually. I do like that idea. German is way closer to English than to French, for sure. The only way I'm not terrible at German is because I talk enough in English on the internet to be quite fluent in English. So I think, yeah, this is one of the things that I would say, personally, I don't know if this is other people's experiences, but all the languages whenever I've tried to kind of look at languages and see, maybe if I've gone on holiday somewhere and I wanted to make sure that I kind of had a little bit of that particular language memorized, German by far is the most similar to English that I've kind of come across. That and maybe, I think to a certain degree, Dutch as well, I think is probably in that kind of thing. But I think those languages are all from the same family, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, it's like there's even words where one of the things that I like is, now I'm gonna get the gender of it wrong because I'm terrible at remembering. There's a few things I can remember. Is it? Hang on. Die Apotheker, which is pharmacy or chemist in the UK, but it's like apothecary. So I always remember it because it's like a really oldie worldy name for what basically is like what you would describe that profession as in the medieval times. They weren't a chemist, they were an apothecary. I hope I got the gender correct on that one. I think it's feminine, if I'm not mistaken, but I could be mistaken. English is also a Germanic language, and new words are different because you went to an island. Yeah, it's. We also borrowed a lot from other languages. Like there's a lot of French in our language, mainly because of the Normans. So interestingly, if you're unaware, I think it's common knowledge, but if you're not aware anyway, is the reason why in English we have different names for the animal when it's alive, and then a different name for the animal when it's dead or as a meat, is basically because of the Norman nobility that invaded us in the after 1066 in the Battle of Hastings. So the Norman king and nobility and stuff like that, they would refer to items by their French names, or like that early medieval French names. So it wouldn't be pig, it'd be pork, it wouldn't be cow, it would be beef. Whereas the names for the animals, we kind of had our old English names for them, but we didn't really necessarily eat as much of that meat. So whereas the nobility did, so they use their words for them. So we have different names for the meat of an animal, whereas other languages will tend to just have the same name. Again, could be completely wrong, but that's the kind of, and it could be completely apocryphal, but that is the things that I've been told about that, about where the English language comes from. It is just this mismatch of French and German and Old English words, and a few Nordic languages as well have crept in there. To be fair, the word stuff is actually because from when we were invaded, so that's at least that's a little bit more understandable, personally. I think one of the things I like as well, the typical, the word that a lot of people will talk about, and like why German's such an interesting language, is you have the word for butterfly. So butterfly in a lot of languages is quite a nice sound. It reflects the like the gracefulness and the delicacy of a butterfly and how beautiful they are. Whereas the joke is that like the Germans refer to him as Schmetterling. It's just great. I just love it. Yeah. It's great. It's a great language. I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed learning it. The thing that I can't really get my head around though, and I have to kind of come up with a little, almost like mnemonic memory things to come up to remind me which word is the gender of what. And then obviously German is worse. So I've gone from English, where there isn't any words, don't tend to be gendered, to a language which has 3, which is interesting. I couldn't pick French or something like that, which only had 2. I decided to go straight for a language which had 3, so that's good. That's very wise of me. Interesting, because Slavic languages, at least Czech and Slovak, we also have different names for the animal and the meat. Yeah, I think it's, from what I've read, it's not super common in a lot of languages, and if it is, it's mainly because it's come from something else. But yeah, our words for the meat of an animal, and it's not like the cut of it either. So like bacon is it isn't the meat; it's the cut of the meat. So we wouldn't. So it'd be pork, whereas other cultures might refer to it. Other languages might refer to just anything from a pig as pig. Because chicken, we don't have. If you have chicken the animal, and you have chicken the meat. There's no distinction. Whereas if you go to a shop in the UK, you wouldn't buy something that's like pig chops or anything like you'd buy pork chops. And you wouldn't buy cow steak, you'd buy beef steak, but you would buy chicken legs or chicken nuggets or something like that. What's next for the World Eaters model-wise? Well, the thing is, for the World Eaters, I am running them. I know I'm getting distracted talking about different languages here, and I do quite like talking about them. But I do understand that there's probably not quite a lot of people tuned into this particular live stream to hear me try and remember the few German words that I know. But yeah, the next... So the World Eaters, they're kind of like almost an army of necessity, because I wanted to enter a tournament but don't have a full army painted yet. So I don't have my raptors, so I thought, well, I need something to act as my raptors, and so these guys have kind of fallen in line to fill in that gap, and I just needed a few extra models just to bulk them out. One of the things I needed was a tech priest, and I also need some special weapon team. So yeah, basically I need to have some I'm running them as firstborn, so I do have access to a heavy weapon and a special weapon per squad. So I need to add some more Mark 6 Marines. But they're going to be fairly straightforward. Not really conversions, just literally the same as what I did before, but with special weapons instead of heavy weapons. So instead of bolters, basically. So yeah, nothing too much. But again, I am very tempted by the idea of running a Chaos Space Marine, because the thing is, I've done it in the past. A few of the videos which people have found interesting is ones where I've tried to show people how you can save money with kit bashing. And I think if I can say, oh, if you want to collect Chaos Space Marines and save money and save time, then build them from Horus Heresy models instead. And I think people will quite enjoy that. Hopefully none of my competitors are watching. Hopefully it's deep enough into the stream, so even if you're watching this on the VOD, you probably won't get as far into the stream and will miss it. But yeah, probably not going to do too much more for this. I might do, depending if the army plays well. The interesting thing is I don't really have. It's mostly firstborn units. It's like literally 3 squads of tactical marines, 3 10-man squads of tactical marines. 2 Terminator squads, a old school firstborn dreadnought, which is a contempt, but I'm running it with the old school dreadnought rules, a Land Raider, and a couple of Terminator characters, and that's literally it. So I've got no Primus units. So this guy is technically a Primus model in rules terms, but obviously he isn't. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how well they do, because I'll just have 30 Marines, and which is, I think, is unusual, because most people, if you're running Primus as well and you're running a lot of specialist squads and things like that, I think I'm actually going to have quite, for 1,500 points, I reckon I'm going to have a fairly decent model count on the ground. There's going to be 30, 40, 42, there's going to be about 45 models in a 1,500 point army, which is, I don't think it's bad. So a few of these areas are a little bit lighter than probably I need to, but I am just applying a couple of thinner coats here. I can fill in the gaps as and when I need to, and then obviously when I come back and do that wash, that will really darken down these recesses. So I'm not worried too much if I'm not getting all of these deeper recesses, because I will be darkening them down later on. Okay. Yeah, I think the suggestion to paint the backpack red was a good one. I think it kind of makes them stand out more as a Techmarine, but also keeping the armor as the white allows them to still fit in nicely with the rest of the World Eaters as well. So I do forget who it was that suggested, but thank you very much for your suggestion. This guy could also be pretty easily proctored as a Warpsmith if you wanted to run a Chaos Space Marine. Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, that is true. Didn't think about that one. That's another option for people who, for when I maybe try. I don't know. I quite enjoyed doing the army series before. Actually, it was a lot of work, but the video did well. People enjoyed watching it. So I think if I did an army where I ran it and costed up everything, so costed up all the extra bits that I used, all the kits that I used for it, and then see if I could come in under budget of using the same equivalent of Chaos Space Marine kits. It's not a bad series idea, and then maybe I could do some tournaments with it and see if it's actually any good. Definitely an option. You can do triple punches with the robot arm and his actual arms. It's the perfect weapons for a World Eater. Why wouldn't you want to give him a servo pack? It's literally the best equipment to give a World Eater. No matter what you have, a solid army to run as Chaos Space Marine. No matter what you have, a solid. Hang on. Sorry, my brain is having a melter, but yeah. No matter what you have, a solid army to run as Chaos. Oh, okay. No, I think I get you. Yeah. Yeah, I think that the Age of Darkness is literally, this is the army that I'm running to the event is basically the Age of Darkness box set with a Techmarine and a few models, which if in hindsight, if I built them back then, as opposed to building them all and then swapping them out the loadouts, yeah, I think that literal army could have been a really good firstborn army as well. But I think Chaos is a good option because most of their units still follow the old style unit composition. So you have tactical squads, you have your Havocs, which are basically just devastators, you still have bikes, your main vehicles are Rhino chassis vehicles and Land Raiders, so you can still just run the new versions of them, which in my opinion are much better as well. But yeah, it's so much stuff, there's so many options, and I think that even if you wanted to maintain that effect, you could still, like I said, just include some of the Chaos Space Marine characters where you need them. But I actually think that some of the older, not the older ones, the Horus Heresy characters, the new ones that they've released, like the Praetors and stuff like that, are really cool. That Traitor Praetor. I never really kind of thought about it, but yeah, the Traitor Praetor guy that's been like recently released or pre-ordered or something like that. He's pretty cool. I like him. I like that model. Okay. It's not particularly neat, and in hindsight, I would have kept this backpack separate and painted it completely separately. That would have made life much easier. But yeah, I didn't really think about that at the time. But you know, you live and you learn. I'll know for next time if I ever decide to build a World Eater Techmarine. Trying to make sure I overspill onto the white armor, because that's going to be annoying if that happens. Although I probably could just cover it up with blood, to be fair. Question, have you ever considered making kit bashes based off of stuff you watched? You mean like TV shows and films? Kit bashes from other universe and war games other than Warhammer. Yeah, okay. So there's kind of two questions that are very similar, actually. Just to clarify, is that Spirecraft. Have you considered kitbashes from other universes? Do you mean kitbashes inspired by other universes, or do you mean kitbashes which are from other ranges outside Warhammer? Because you mean the same thing. I can answer two questions with one response. Efficient. Let's get these recesses, because that's the only thing. Like kitbashing some infantry units, or maybe historical. Okay. So two different questions, but very similar. In terms of kitbashing components from other stuff, kitbashing stuff inspired by other stuff, I haven't really. I don't know why. I don't know if it's because my creativity starts and ends with Warhammer. But I don't know. I'm not sure why I haven't. I think it's just because I don't think everything I've done is kind of based on something in universe. I might have taken influences from something outside of it, but I've never really built anything based on like a completely different intellectual property. I've never built like a clone trooper themed Space Marine army, or there's probably some stuff in Dune that would be pretty good. That's very similar to Warhammer already, I guess, but yeah. I think part of the reason why is because it's not always easy to get the aesthetic of Warhammer into other stuff. I'm sure other people have managed it, probably more talented people than myself, but personally for me, I've just not really had any ideas that I could be like, oh yeah, that'd work really cool. I've definitely taken inspiration from other stuff that I've really looked at other, like the Dark Souls and stuff like that. I've really enjoyed playing the Souls games, and there's a lot of stuff in those which are really, really well, really, really ripe for translation into kind of Warhammer based stuff. So yeah, there's definitely some aspects there, but in terms of kitbashing models from other ranges, I haven't done anything recently. I did a little bit of bolt action stuff, a little bit of World War II stuff a few years ago. Not much. I basically built some. At the time, there weren't any winter models for Germans or anything like that, so I basically did a kitbash guide on how to kitbash like winter uniform Germans. And then I also did one for... There was another one I did. I completely forgot what it was now. I did another one. I did a couple of kitbashes for bolt action, basically. I did a few kitbashes for Kings of War, back when I used to play Kings of War many years ago. I think it was like Kings of War first edition, actually, I think. Maybe second edition. Definitely not the third edition, but yeah, it was quite a while ago. I think it might have been. Maybe it was second edition. I don't know. Anyway, I did a little bit of kitbashing for that. I basically had I had like a all werewolf army, but the characters, they didn't have any werewolf characters at the time, so I had to kitbash some werewolf characters to represent. Sorry, some werewolf miniatures to represent the characters that you could run. So I had to have like a sorcerer that was on a mount, so that it had the right base size, and I give him some armor because the model had armor, so I had to represent that somehow on the model. But yeah, no, it was kind of like it's not really something I've done an awful lot of. Mainly kitbash Warhammer, always have, always will do. I've never really done much for Infinity. Again, that's a range that I just don't really know an awful lot about personally. I mean, it might have changed, but if my previous understanding, most of the stuff was kind of like monopose anyway. It wasn't really as conducive to kitbashing as maybe Warhammer is. Could be mistaken. Things could have changed. It's been a while since I've looked at anything like that. Question: any tips for desert bases for Blade Guard Lieutenant and Captain with relic shields? Extended arm with shield makes it a bit tricky. What chapter are you painting them in? Because that'll affect what kind of colours you want to go for the base deserts. Because there's a few different desert basing schemes you can go for. Alan Harding, so I'm trying to avoid opening a can of worms, but in a recent video of yours, I saw that you weren't really keen on Necromunda. With your conversion skills, why not? Your gang would be incredible. So basically, the whole thing about Necromunda, it's not that I'm not keen on it, really. It's just that I don't really have any... It's not even that I don't have any interest in playing the game. It's just that I don't have any mental capacity for playing the game. The rules seem very complicated. I think if someone said to me, listen, Pete, I'm going to take you to somewhere, we've got a board, it's set up, it's a Necromunda board, it's all cool scenery. Yeah, the only person you're going to trigger that can of worms was Yankee. But yeah, if someone said, okay, I've got like a setup for you, we're gonna run through the rules, we're gonna do all this, and that's kind of probably where it is. I think I've played Age of Sigmar and I enjoyed Age of Sigmar, so I know the Age of Sigmar rule set. I have enough of an understanding of 40k because I've had to learn the rules in a way to a certain degree, just so I can kind of engage properly with the kitbashing side. So I can say to people, okay, if you want to build this army and follow these rules, and I had to understand what units people would want, that kind of thing. But with Necromunda, I always like the models. I've never ever disliked the range of Necromunda models. I think they're such a cool range of models. They look cool. The people who design the kits are geniuses because the range of stuff that's available, the upgrade sets, all that kind of stuff is amazing. Great. Can't fault them. Use Necromunda stuff so often. And I think the only reason why I haven't kitbashed my own gang, because I would love to, I think that'd be great fun to do, is it's just because I don't understand the game enough and I don't necessarily have the time or the ability to understand it to the point where I would want to before I could go ahead and kitbash something, basically. That's the long and short of it, essentially. Yankee, as soon as Necromunda word is spoken, shows up. Well, that's why I changed his name in the Discord to... Yankee ask me about Necromunda, because every time I'm going through so he's got the mod role in my Discord, so his name is in orange, so I can see his stuff more than probably other people's, and every time I'm scrolling through, every single comment from Yankee is talking about Necromunda, even if the conversation isn't Necromunda. If there's a way for I'll mention. I forgot. Someone asked me about the thing as well. I'll mention that in a second. So yeah. So every time something, if there's a way for Yankee to shoehorn Necromunda into a conversation, he will. Put simply, I am exaggerating a little bit, not a lot, but I am exaggerating a little bit. Anyway, so this picture, people who weren't there during the Twitch streaming days, basically, I had a. We were talking about old games or something. Oh no, we were talking about Baldur's Gate, and I said, "Oh, I think I played an old Baldur's Gate game like ages ago, like years and years ago, but I can't remember. I can vaguely remember what the box is." And when I checked to see if it was like Baldur's Gate 2 or Dark Alliance or one of the older Baldur's Gate games, it wasn't the box. It wasn't the box that I had in mind. I was like, no, that isn't it. And I was kind of thinking, what is it now? I very vividly remember the box being this. So I basically drew that picture without the Call of Cthulhu on there. So I drew the picture, and if you look at I couldn't remember what it was. I drew the picture completely out of memory. I haven't seen the box art in probably about. Since it's released, basically. I unlikely will have seen it. So that was all completely from memory. And if you look at the actual box, you kind of see there's a rough semblance of composition and subject there. It's not exact, but it's roughly there. And someone managed to guess from my very rough drawing what the game was. Funny enough, I don't actually play the game. I just really remember seeing the game, I think. I don't know why. It kind of stuck in my head so vividly. And then also at the time I was kind of lamenting the fact that I don't have like a co-host, because the streams which have like someone else there, or just like painting phase, for example, there's like a few people in that group. So if one person's maybe just concentrating, or maybe just goes quiet for a second, there's a couple of other people that can talk. Whereas for me, if I'm not talking, it's just dead silence. And sometimes if I forget to talk, then we end up with situations where I'm just sat there just painting, and we're not talking about anything. So yeah, so I thought it'd be good to have a co-host. So I just kind of adopted him as my little co-host. And then other people pointed out, not me, other people pointed out that he was also, he looked a little bit like Peachy, but I don't see the resemblance personally. Well, yeah, that's why there is a picture, a hand-drawn picture of the Call of Cthulhu video game above my webcam. And I wonder how many people have seen that, have no understanding of what it is either, but just took it that, yep, there we go, let's take it. He looks like handsome Squidward. He does have the strong nose and forehead of handsome Squidward, and quite a strong jaw there, but you can see it. If you say it 3 times in the middle of the night in front of a Merry Necromunda, will Yankee show up behind you? No, Yankee is too busy talking to other people about Necromunda to show up in anyone's bathrooms. Well, technically, Lorgar existed before Handsome Squidward. So, technically, Handsome Squidward looks like Lorgar. Anyone think of that? Just saying. There's one before the other. This red is taking so long. What do you enjoy most between taking inspiration from the lore, creating your own characters, and do you have plans on making custom chapters in the future or expanding an existing force? So, I'm going to kind of cop out of giving you a straight answer to that question, because I enjoy, when I'm creating characters from the lore and stuff like that, when I'm creating my new character, I often look into the lore to kind of give them a basis of existence in the lore, if that makes sense. And I quite enjoy that. It's almost like if I'm creating something new, like, oh, how could this have existed? How does this fit into what is established? And that's kind of like part of a puzzle, really. You have to find the parts which are maybe briefly mentioned or only vaguely talked about. You have the opportunity to elaborate on those details and things like that. So I quite like that aspect. But then also, in terms of, I suppose, more directly basing a conversion over something which is heavily described in the lore versus creating something completely new, you have a few disadvantages and advantages. So if you're basing something on existing lore, you have a really good kind of baseline that you can work on. You've got a lot of inspiration, usually in the form of written lore, artwork, miniatures, existing miniatures, things like that. So you can build upon it. You have like a starting point. But equally, you also have a lot more restriction, because if I am building a well-known character or a well-known chapter, for example, from the lore that's maybe doesn't have any models but has background, and I do something, I kind of have to make sure that everything I'm doing is adhering to that lore and is actually following what is established. And that, it can be restrictive, but it also gives you a good starting point. The opposite is true when you're making something completely fresh, because you have no restrictions really, beyond a few kind of like overarching world restrictions, like universe restrictions. You can do whatever you want, and as long as you can justify it, you can pretty much build whatever you want as well. But it's really hard to sometimes start from nothing, because you need a baseline. And this is one of the ideas I've actually been kind of playing around with that a little bit, I think, for a future videos, is to do a video on creating how to create a custom Space Marine chapter, and actually doing like a full guide on how I would go about making one and using that as a it's kind of like a way of showing people, okay, I'm going to build a custom Chaos Space Marine, a custom Space Marine chapter, and this is the process that I went through it, and how I came up with the background, how I came up with the aesthetic, how I came up with the theme, and how I then went on to build it and look for parts. Because one of the things that people always ask me is, oh, I'm building my own custom chapter. Do you have any ideas for them? And I'll say, okay, cool. Where are they from? And they're like, well, I haven't really established that. Okay, well, what is their specialism? What are they kind of designed for? What kind of combat do they excel at? And again, people don't always have an idea. They maybe have a color scheme and a name, and that's nothing. You can literally apply a name and a color scheme to pretty much everything. I mean, you have the Imperial Fists, which are like, yeah, it kind of makes sense that they've got like a male's gauntlet, but really, I think Imperial Fists and Iron Warriors, their themings are the opposite way around for their names. So Iron Warriors, you would expect to be defensive. They are warriors made of iron. They are strong. They are stalwart. Whereas Imperial Fists are like, a fist is like, it's not a defensive weapon. It's an attacking weapon. So in the lore, Imperial Fists are experts at defense, and Iron Warriors are experts at siegecraft. So the names don't really make sense. So it doesn't really matter if the names don't really match up. So the name and the colour scheme are the last things you should be thinking about, in my opinion, if you want to come up with your own custom chapter. And I'd just like to come up with make a video which would be helpful to people who want to make their own custom stuff, and give them some advice and what steps I take, and then see if that's like helpful for them. And then maybe do, like, as part of that video, make a custom chapter for people. I hope that answers your question. It was a very long-winded question. Sorry for a very short question. So I do apologize for that, but that is the risk you take asking me anything about kitbashing or the lore or backgrounds or anything like that. I have a habit of going off on a tangent, which is exactly why I need a co-host, just someone to say, Pete, come on, stay on topic, mate. I'm sorry the red's taking too long. I wouldn't have suggested had I known. I'm also a bit too used to speed paint and dry brushing. Don't worry, it's kind of me. I'm being a little bit too... To be honest, once the red's done, that's a big part, like a bulk part of the model done as well, because I'm painting probably... I'm also chatting at the same time, so I'm not really paying my 100% attention. Don't worry. I think it looks better, in my opinion. I am glad that I went for the red. I wasn't sure how much red to include, which is why I just started off with the knee pads and just saw how they looked. So don't worry about it. I actually really like the red. Walking Illusion. Hey Pete, just want to say thanks for the kitbashing videos. It may or may not have inspired me to finally get into 40k. Well, first of all, I do apologize, because 40k is a very time-consuming, money-consuming hobby. So I do apologize for getting you into something like that. But I'm also very happy to hear that you obviously enjoyed the videos enough to feel like you want to take the plunge yourself. So yeah, I hope you continue to enjoy it, and I hope you don't regret ever watching any of my videos in the future, because you just kind of sat there going, oh god, there's some really cool Warhammer stuff that I want to get, and I've still got loads of stuff in boxes that's not been painted yet. Do you ever discuss the inhibitive financial nature of your content, irrespective of the occasional 3D printing? I have kind of touched upon it, and this is kind of coming back to why it's something I wanted to address a little bit more in the future, because it is obviously Warhammer is a luxury hobby. I say luxury in the sense that it's not a necessity at all. You don't need to do Warhammer. Really, you should spend money on things like food and heating. It's a luxury. It's there to be entertainment, time killer, whatever. But that being said, we are in kind of like a cost of living crisis, and when your content is predominantly geared towards spending more money on already expensive models, I'm sometimes wondering if they are relevant. So I've kind of considered trying to do stuff which is more like how kitbashing can save you money, which is why I've kind of really latched onto that idea of having a like the idea we've been discussing in the stream tonight of having a Chaos Space Marine army built from Horus Heresy units, and then which are cheaper, basically, because I think that's a good use of kitbashing and conversions and looking at kits in a different way, and there could be a degree of kitbashing involved with that as well that would still keep things under budget. Basically, could you build a cheaper army and still have it recognized well? I think this bold pyro red has really helped to bring out those red areas as well now, by the way. So yeah, another long-winded answer to a pretty straightforward question. Yeah, I understand that there is like obviously a degree of people who will watch my stuff and will never ever attempt anything, but I always try to structure my videos in a sense where you could approach most steps independently of the other steps. So especially my Horus Heresy and my old kind of custom Space Marine chapter conversion videos I used to do, I would break down each of the steps into something being like, oh, well, if you want to kitbash an army, well, you just take one of these 5 steps that I've given you of customization and apply one of them to a unit leader, another one to a character, another one to maybe an elite unit, and that would like spread out the cost. So I've always tried to make it so that it's not, oh, you have to kitbash every single model in your army using every single one of these methods. It's more of like here's how you can kitbash. Here's how you can use these parts to represent different things. Here's how you can combine kits from this kit to create a certain aesthetic, blah, blah, blah. And it's more, I've tried to concentrate more on the technical aspect, just to make it more widely appealing, I guess, than people who just want to completely recreate everything that I've put in the video rather than just using it as a basis for their own kit bashes. Are you going to use a transfer for the Techmarine insignia? So yeah, I'm going to try and find something. I might just dip into the Skitarii kit. I don't know. I'll find something. I reckon there might be something in the vehicle kits actually, which will have something, I guess. I do have 2 of the Techmarine kits. I don't know if they come with anything though, so I'll have to see. But yeah, it's going to need some sort of Techmarine icon, I think, on the leg, and then probably it's got the Adeptus Mechanicus logo though, which is at least that's brought in that aspect of it to a degree. If you teach your kids to play Warhammer, they'll never have any money for drugs. Yeah, well, on that note, I will I think I'm going to call it there for today. I think we're going to have the final little bit of a warm down. What is going on with my what is going on here? Honestly, my chat is one of my chats is just not keeping up with everything. So I'm just going to go over to here and have a look at the chat. It's so stupid. But yeah, we'll have the final little bit of a warm down. What is going on with my chat? Honestly, my chat is one of my chats is just not keeping up with everything. So I'm just going to go over to here and have a look at the chat. It's so stupid. But yeah, we'll have the final little bit of a warm down. What is going on with my chat? It's so stupid. Have you ever considered 3D printing? Yes, I have considered 3D. I have done videos on 3D printing. The reason why I don't do much 3D printing at the moment is because the one that I have, the 3D printer I've got is a couple of years old, so it's not really on par with modern day printers and what they can do. And also, it's in a garage, which means that for most of the year, it's too cold to print unless I've got a little enclosure for it, which is just a hassle. So yeah. I also don't do a lot of 3D printing content because not everyone has 3D printers, so I don't want to alienate people who aren't really interested in 3D printing by using 3D printed components, but there is always that option for the future. Question, have you considered doing more conversions from the Daunian Heresy? Also, how is the Space Wolf Demons coming along? The Space Wolf Demons project is on hold for the time being. It's not abandoned, it's just that I've had other projects that I've wanted to get done, and I've bought some stuff ready for it, so it's kind of I've got some kits ready for it, and I will be adding to them as I go on, but at the moment there's nothing more that's been worked on other than just kind of like thinking about certain stuff. I have a wacky idea for a traitor Space Marines. How do you feel about a Space Marine chapter that's entirely infected by gene stealers? So, putting my Lorehound, I don't have a hat, but imagine there's a hat. Gene stealers as a Tyranids, yes, Tyranids you could do. Gene stealers and how they infect stuff wouldn't necessarily work because of the way gene stealers work over generations, and Space Marines don't reproduce, so it'd be impossible to kind of get that. The only way you could do it would be if they managed to infect the. It would either have to be intentional on the Space Marines' parts, like they would have to be themselves taking on that gene stealer DNA, maybe thinking it'd improve them or something like that, which would make them like traitor anyway. So you could do it that direction. You could have some sort of traitor chaos Space Marine, or just traitor Marine, not necessarily chaos. Or you could have some sort of brain bug thing. There are like Tyranid brain bugs where they can take over the hosts and make them do things. Gene stealer cults and the way they work with normal humans, and the way gene stealer wouldn't necessarily work because it is like that generational thing, but you would have to have it so that because if it was unintentional, then the apothecaries would notice the gene seed flaw straight away, and they would purge that gene seed from existence, and if the Inquisition found out about it, then they would just purge the chapter. So it's going to have to be something which is intentional, and yeah, not impossible, but yeah, you could do it. Nice idea. Fabius Smile tinkering with gene stealer DNA. Yeah, that's a perfect example, basically. And also, to be fair as well, Fabius Bile has also shown up in the lore a few times, posing as other people, posing as like loyalists, apothecaries and stuff like that. I think there's one of them where he helped to create the Blood Fiends, which are like clones of Blood Angel clones that have gone kind of like ravenous and have become like these like grotesque creatures. So yeah, he had his part in that, and that was the Blood Angels. He managed to get involved with the Blood Angels. So yeah, you could potentially have some sort of outside influence doing that, but it would really need to be unnoticed over a long period of time to have that generational thing. But it's not impossible. You could literally have some like gene stealer or Tyranid DNA splicing going on, I guess. The Alpha Legion mind washed the entire planet to kill a recruiting chapter of that planet, so maybe gene stealers could do that. Yeah, there's always I find in the 40k universe, the reason why the lore is great is because there's so many things have happened, and there's so many precedents for things to have happened in a certain way. You can usually go back and find some sort of way that you can get what you want to happen. You just have to be a bit more clever about it. And I always feel like, because for me, I obviously make videos, and I always need to justify exactly what it is that I'm doing and explain, because if I don't, people will be in the comments saying, well, you did this wrong according to this book, yeah, that's impossible, blah blah blah. So yeah, as someone who has to think about all that kind of stuff when they're doing a video, it's good to think about it. I also think it helps to flesh out the background, and it kind of gives it a little bit more of a background kind of idea for it. But anyway, cool. I think that sums up the stream. So thank you very much to everyone who's come along and watched me rant about all the painting styles. Watch me do a little bit of painting on this Techmarine. I'm going to be... I might work on them a little bit more before the next stream. I'll see. Possibly not. It depends. Depends how much time I get. But yeah, thank you very much to everyone who's sat here with listen to me rant about stuff, paint some stuff, look at some other stuff, and also have a look at my Kickstarter in its very early stages. So yeah, thank you very much. I will be doing another stream, I think next Sunday. I can't remember if next Sunday is a Sunday I can't do, but I will post. If you're on Discord, there will be a post on that of when the next live stream is. I'll also be doing it on the stream here. So yeah, anyway, thank you very much to everyone who has joined the stream, everyone who has super chatted, everyone who's a channel member, everyone who's a Patreon member. Thank you very much for your support. It is massively appreciated. It means I can do this as my job. So I am massively thankful to everyone who helps to support me. So yeah, thank you very much. Also, everyone who doesn't use AdBlock as well, thank you very much. If you use AdBlock and you're not a Patreon supporter and you're not a member, then carry on watching because it's good for like bumping up the numbers, but just feel ashamed. Feel some sort of shame as you're doing it, at least. Okay? Thank you very much. Cool. Anyway, see you later, guys. Have a great week, and I shall see you next time. Goodbye.